Back in 2020, Google made a bold aim of using only clean, carbon-free electricity by 2030. Data centers are notorious for consuming billions of kilowatt hours of energy each year. They roughly use 1% of the electricity on the planet. And this number can rise to 8% by 2030. Google's commitment to sustainability isn't new. This tech giant achieved carbon neutrality in 2007 and has purchased more than 10 gigawatts of clean energy by investing in wind and solar technologies in places like Astoria, South Dakota, Chile, and Taiwan. From 2007 to 2020, Google matched 100% of its global electricity use with purchases of renewable energy. That too during the 2 pandemic years when everything shifted to online and the strain on global data servers doubled. People's work, school, doctor's appointments, first dates, and visit with loved ones happened virtually. Google Meet and Duo hosted over 1 trillion minutes of video calls in 2020, but still kept pace with achieving its goal. However, there are instances when wind and solar combined couldn't keep up with Google's energy demand. So when the sun doesn't shine bright or the wind is slow and non-existent, they often have to rely on carbon-emitting resources such as coal and gas power plants. That's why Google made an early bet on geothermal energy that can help progress its green goals. The company partnered with Fervo Energy in 2021 to develop next-generation geothermal power. This power plant is situated near Winnemucca, Nevada, and sends 3.5 megawatts of energy to the power grid. For context, 1 megawatt is enough to meet the demand of roughly 750 homes at the same time. Google has 2 data centers there, one near Las Vegas and the other near Reno. These 2 sites can utilize clean energy for the main grid. Unlike wind and solar energy models, geothermal energy can be extracted all year round and doesn't have to be restricted to weather changes or wind pressure. As of now, geothermal energy supplies less than 1% of the world's energy needs. That's not impressive, but it could be enhanced in the near future. But how does geothermal work anyway? We know that the Earth's core is very hot. The high temperature heats water in the underground reservoirs in the Earth's crust. This hot water might come down to the surface in the form of hot springs and geysers. A geothermal power plant draws water from these underground reservoirs to the surface to produce steam. This steam then drives turbines that generate electricity. The estimated energy that can be recovered and utilized on the Earth's surface is 4.5 times 10 to the 6 exajoules. This is enough to power the Earth 3 times over. It's important to note that not all countries can easily extract geothermal energy, as it is usually found along major tectonic plate boundaries where most volcanoes are placed. And even if availability isn't the problem, renewable technologies like these are still too costly for large-scale deployment. These same obstacles are faced by Google, particularly in some sites in Asia. Most geothermal stations are built where naturally heated water can be easily tapped, like hot springs and geysers. This hot water is pumped to the surface, where it produces steam that powers turbines. But guess what? The site where Google's geothermal plant stands is just dry rock with no hot water. So how did Fervo solve this problem? And can other countries with low hydrothermal resources learn from it? Stay with us till the end to find out. While hot water might not be present everywhere, hot rocks are virtually everywhere, with temperatures rising hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit within the first few miles of the surface. Fervo drilled thousands of feet below ground to reach the hot rock and pump its water into the pipeline, which got heated up underground. Using the tricks mastered by the oil and gas industry, Fervo drilled 2 wells that each extended more than 7,000 feet down. This is more than 2 times the length of the Burj Khalifa, but they didn't stop there. They extended both their wells horizontally up to another 3,000 feet. To access more feet, Fervo created fractures in the rock. Cold water is then pumped underground through the well. Due to the high pressure, water enters the fractures where it comes in contact with heat. The water gets heated to a temperature of around 375 degrees Fahrenheit and rises to enter the second well. Fervo announced that its experiment had succeeded after a month-long testing period that saw temperatures at the bottom of the boreholes reach 375 degrees Fahrenheit. This experiment gave them enough steam to produce an estimated 3.5 megawatts of electricity. While this output is less than the initial 5 megawatt estimate when Google announced it, small modifications can increase its generation power in the future. Fervo CEO Tim Latimer also pointed out that this project is the first to achieve such a high level of performance. Google's Nevada station is built close to a traditional geothermal power plant so that the project can use existing turbines and power lines to deliver electricity to the grid. With the success of Google's geothermal venture, Fervo wants to replicate this model in as many places as possible to help transition the world away from coal, oil, and natural gas, and hence reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This is also the long-term goal for Google, who want to go completely carbon-free by the end of the decade. In September 2020, Google released a report that showed gaps in its clean energy supply. The green spikes represent the proportion of green energy powering their data centers, while the black region shows the gaps. Google also used other visual data like these carbon clocks to show how green each of their data center is in different locations. These carbon clocks show hourly carbon-free energy performance at each Google data center during September 2019, 1 year before the publication of this paper. Oklahoma shows impressive results with a full green clock, standing at 96% carbon-free energy. The lowest number is found in Singapore, which only shows 3% efficiency. Google has to overcome these gaps if it truly wants to go 100% carbon-free. But wait, wasn't Google already carbon neutral back in 2007? What do you mean they want to go carbon-free 24/7 for all 365 days? This brings us to a fundamental difference between carbon neutrality and carbon-free status. When Google announced that it became carbon neutral, it meant that it compensated for its greenhouse emissions by buying carbon offsets and carbon credits. Carbon offsets allow governments, organizations, and even celebrities like Taylor Swift who keep using their private jets to compensate by supporting projects that reduce or remove emissions elsewhere. On the other side, carbon-free means that Google won't emit any emissions in the first place. It will completely source its energy from renewable sources like wind, solar, and geothermal, and sustainable hydroelectric or biomass energy. In addition, Google is also working to advance other carbon-free technologies like large-scale battery storage, advanced nuclear, and green hydrogen, which can all help in the fight against climate change. There is no doubt that geothermal energy has a lot of potential in the future as more sophisticated techniques will be there to tap the Earth's heat. The idea of geothermal power is simple and elegant. This is why it was even used by people thousands of years ago. Geothermal energy from natural pools and hot springs was used for cooking, bathing, and warmth. There's evidence that Native Americans used geothermal energy for cooking as early as 10,000 years ago. In ancient times, baths heated by hot springs were used by Greeks and Romans. And examples of geothermal space heating date at least as far back as the Roman city of Pompeii during the 1st century. However, such uses of geothermal energy were initially limited to sites where hot water and steam were accessible. In the 20th century, electricity demand prompted some people to explore geothermal energy as an option. The first breakthrough, or rather the first geothermal power plant, was invented in Tuscany, Italy. Thanks to Prince Piero Gennaro Conti, an Italian businessman, the world first found its way to geothermal energy. He tested the world's first geothermal energy power generator on 4 July 1904 in Larderello, Italy. It was able to produce 10 kilowatts of energy and powered 5 light bulbs. Later, in 1911, the world's first commercial geothermal power station was built there. This plant gradually improved throughout the years, and now Larderello is composed of 34 plants operated by the Italian company Enel Green Power EGP. The capacity of the site is now 800 megawatts and has helped Italy become one of the top producers of geothermal energy in the world. As global temperatures steadily rise due to our continued use of fossil fuel energy, almost every country and business is looking for environmentally friendly options. In 2019 alone, Google enclosed 18 new deals that included millions of solar panels and hundreds of wind turbines spread across 3 continents. These deals have driven more than $7 billion in new construction and thousands of related jobs. The deals include investments in places like the US, Europe, and Chile. In the US, Google purchased solar farms in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Texas, more than doubling the capacity of its solar portfolio. In Chile, Google used a hybrid system of both solar and wind to power its Chilean data center. After the success of Google's geothermal site in Nevada, the tech giant partnered with Project Interspace. This company is a leading nonprofit organization dedicated to the global development of geothermal energy. Through this collaboration, Project Interspace can help Google realize its goal of a carbon-free future. Do you think geothermal energy is the future? Can it beat other sources of electricity like nuclear, solar, or wind? Right now in Texas, SpaceX is working towards a future when traveling to other planets is as normal as taking a flight with their Star Factory, a facility capable of building one Starship rocket every day. This could change our path to Mars and beyond. For a long time, people have been fascinated by the stars and dreamed of exploring further than Earth. But the challenges have always been massive, especially with the high costs of making and launching rockets. These costs have kept space travel limited to a few wealthy nations and top space agencies. And that's where SpaceX steps in. They aim to completely redefine space travel. The Star Factory is a bigger part of this effort, a large-scale production site designed to build rockets faster and cheaper. It's not just about sending more rockets into space, it's about making space travel affordable and creating new opportunities for exploration that were previously out of reach. Star Factory is a facility at Starbase. It was built to facilitate the removal of the old tents and increase the production of Starship components. Once completed, it's expected to produce parts for up to 3 ships a week. Originally, SpaceX planned Starbase to accommodate launches of Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and other suborbital vehicles. However, in 2018, SpaceX shifted its focus to exclusively using the site for its next-generation launch vehicle, the Starship. This shift led the expansion of production and testing capacities between 2018 and 2020, aiming to make Starbase a launch point for Mars missions. Major construction at SpaceX's Boca Chica launch site kicked off in 2016, starting with soil preparation for the launch pad, a process expected to take about 2 years. By late 2018, additional soil work and construction were well underway. By September 2019, the site had evolved into an operational launch facility equipped with ground support gear necessary for testing methane-fueled Starship vehicles. Initially, lighter work like fencing and setting up temporary buildings at the control center started in 2014. The original plans for the Texas launch location, as outlined by the 2013 Draft Environmental Impact Statement (EIS), included a 20-acre vertical launch area and a 12.2-acre space for a launch control center and pad near Texas State Highway 4. However, adjustments were made based on the actual land SpaceX could purchase and reconfigure. SpaceX broke ground on the site in September 2014, but construction wasn't expected till late 2015. This timeline was pushed further as the same team that was building Kennedy Space Center Launch Pad 39A would also handle Boca Chica. SpaceX planned to invest about $100 million over several years, while Texas state authorities committed $15 million to extend infrastructure to support the new spaceport. The design phase wrapped up by March 2015, but construction was delayed due to a rocket explosion at one of SpaceX's Florida launch sites in 2016. This incident diverted resources and held up progress for over a year. To deal with the waterlogged ground at Boca Chica, SpaceX used a soil surcharging process, trucking in 310,000 cubic yards of new soil. Between late 2015 and early 2016, despite these efforts, poor soil stability led to further delays, pushing back the extended completion to 2017 and the first launch date to 2018. By 2018, SpaceX ramped up construction significantly, developing a large propellant tank farm and relocating the Starhopper prototype to the launch pad, where it flew for the first time in July 2019. By September 2019, the site was functioning as a full-fledged industrial rocket facility, operating multiple shifts to support extensive testing. Plans for future expansions of the SpaceX South Texas launch site emerged in 2021, including new suborbital test stands, an additional orbital launch pad, orbital launch mount B, and new integration towers. By mid-2021, SpaceX had completed stacking the launch tower and continued developing critical infrastructure, such as the Stage 0 launch mount, built to support and catch the rockets. In April 2023, Starbase hosted its first launch of the fully stacked Ship 24 and Booster 7. The mission ended prematurely due to control issues, and the rocket was destroyed mid-flight, highlighting the ongoing challenges in developing reusable and reliable spaceflight systems. Despite these setbacks, SpaceX continues to push forward with its ambitious plans for Starbase, aiming to make it a central hub for interplanetary missions in the future. The Star Factory building features 3 different heights and is clad in white panels with black cladding and glass on the front and extends up to the location of the old tents, original ring yard, and Mega Bay 2. Most structural steelwork has been completed with the facility in the process of being fully cladded, roofed, and soon outfitted with all the equipment required to fully produce Starships. A similar building was previously constructed at SpaceX's Roberts Road facility at Cape Canaveral. The building had the name Star Factory first. However, with SpaceX deciding to focus on the development of their site in Texas, the building was repurposed to a processing facility for the Starlink satellites ahead of the launch on Falcon 9. Thus, it was renamed by the community to Hangar 2. Ground was broken for the first phase of the Star Factory around February 2022, between Tents 3 and 4. In the following years, the facility expanded through additional phases. Phase 2 was constructed to the northeast of the first, and phases 3 and 4 were built to the southeast. As each new phase was completed, it quickly became operational, enabling a continuous ramp-up in production capabilities. Phase 4 was notable for its higher roof, which housed nose cones before the phase was sealed. Currently, Phase 5 is under construction to the southwest of Phase 4, where tents 1, 2, and 3 once stood. These tents were demolished in mid to late 2023 to make room for the new expansion. By March of this year, glass installation began on the front of the Star Factory beneath the black cladding. Star Factory is a key element in SpaceX's mission to enable frequent missions to Mars and beyond, aligning with Elon's vision of establishing a self-sustaining human presence on the red planet. Located within the coastal plains of Texas at SpaceX's Starbase, the Star Factory stands as an engineering marvel, reshaping the aerospace industry. The facility spans an impressive 800 by 800 feet, totaling approximately 640,000 square feet, or around 60,000 square meters. Musk describes it as the machine that builds the machine, replacing the previous manufacturing tents and representing a significant leap forward in production capacity. The Star Factory's ambitious goal is to produce a Starship rocket, a spacecraft capable of carrying up to 100 people every day. This unprecedented production rate could dramatically change how we approach interplanetary travel. The key to this extraordinary production capability lies in the Star Factory's innovative design. Unlike conventional aerospace facilities, the Star Factory employs an adjacent linear flow model, strategically organizing each stage in the manufacturing process so that it seamlessly feeds into the next. It's like a well-choreographed dance where components and partially assembled rockets move efficiently from one workstation to another, minimizing delays and maximizing productivity. The factory floor buzzes with specialized workstations, each dedicated to specific tasks. Some focus on welding primary structures, while others handle the installation of heat shields. This layout optimizes every step of the rocket construction process for speed and precision. Beyond its design, the Star Factory distinguishes itself through advanced manufacturing techniques that push the boundaries of rocket production. Automated assembly lines and state-of-the-art robotics work alongside human engineers and technicians, creating a hybrid workforce that merges human creativity with machine precision. These robots are not just limited to simple tasks. They handle complex operations like welding, painting, and material handling with a level of precision beyond human capabilities. This automation supports around-the-clock production cycles and significantly lowers the risk of human error in critical components. SpaceX's approach draws inspiration from Tesla's playbook, applying similar principles of automation and efficiency to revolutionize the aerospace industry. The flagship Star Factory bears a strong resemblance to Texas Gigafactories, which have transformed electric vehicle production. By applying these proven manufacturing techniques to rockets, SpaceX is introducing automotive-style efficiency to the aerospace industry. Quality control is critical in rocket production, and the Star Factory does not cut corners. Advanced diagnostic tools such as X-ray machines and ultrasonic testers inspect every component, ensuring that each part meets strict standards without slowing down the production line. One of the standout features of the Star Factory is its commitment to iterative design. Each Starship prototype is built with improvements based on data from previous flights and tests. This continuous refinement process allows SpaceX to rapidly evolve the Starship design, pushing the limits of performance and reliability with every new version. These innovations have a massive impact on production time and costs. By streamlining the manufacturing process and leveraging advanced technologies, SpaceX has drastically reduced the time and resources needed to build rockets. What used to take years can now be potentially completed in days at a fraction of the traditional cost. The Star Factory's impressive capabilities are just one piece of SpaceX's broader vision for interplanetary travel, centered around the revolutionary Starship spacecraft. Starship isn't just another rocket. It's a fully reusable spacecraft designed to redefine space exploration. Measuring 394 feet in height, it can carry up to 100 people or 150 metric tons of cargo to destinations like the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Elon envisions even larger future versions, with Starship potentially reaching 500 feet in height and capable of carrying 200 or more metric tons of payload. These capabilities represent a massive leap in our ability to send humans and supplies beyond Earth's orbit. At the heart of Starship's impressive performance are its Raptor engines. These advanced propulsion systems use liquid methane and liquid oxygen, offering twice the thrust of the engines used on SpaceX's Falcon 9 rockets. The boost in power is essential for lifting heavy payloads out of Earth's gravity and propelling them across space. The choice of methane as fuel is strategic. It can potentially be produced on Mars using carbon dioxide from the Martian atmosphere and water ice from beneath the planet's surface. Another critical innovation is Starship's heat shield, composed of thousands of hexagonal ceramic tiles that protect the spacecraft during the intense heat of atmospheric re-entry. This feature is essential for reusability, significantly cutting the cost of spaceflight. Starship's reusability and high payload capacity could dramatically lower the cost of launching materials into orbit, opening up new possibilities for scientific research, space tourism, and even large-scale construction projects beyond Earth. But SpaceX's ambitions go far beyond low Earth orbit. Elon's ultimate goal is to colonize Mars, a massive undertaking that requires a fleet of spacecraft capable of transporting thousands of people and millions of tons of equipment and supplies. Establishing a self-sustaining city on Mars will require extensive infrastructure, including habitat modules, power generation equipment, food production systems, and medical facilities. Each mission will need to carry not just people, but all the tools and supplies necessary for survival on the red planet. To achieve this, mass production becomes essential. Traditional aerospace manufacturing, with its complex supply chains and reliance on manual labor, cannot meet the demands of such an ambitious project. Building even a single spacecraft like NASA's Space Launch System (SLS) can take years and cost around $2 billion a launch, a limitation that becomes clear when considering the tight launch windows to Mars, which occur every 26 months. To establish a sustainable presence on Mars, SpaceX would need to launch multiple spacecraft during each window. The Star Factory addresses these challenges head-on with advanced manufacturing techniques, including automated assembly lines and robotics. SpaceX aims to optimize production to the extent that it can produce one Starship per day, a shift that could redefine spacecraft manufacturing. The rapid production rate is critical for several reasons. It allows for quick iteration and improvements of Starship designs, ensures a steady supply of spacecraft for operations and tests, and reduces costs through economies of scale. Musk has set a goal of bringing the production cost of each Starship down to between $20 to $30 million, with a long-term target as low as $10 million a spacecraft. This efficiency, combined with the reusability of the spacecraft, makes the idea of Mars colonization not just a distant dream, but a tangible reality. The Star Factory marks a pivotal moment in space exploration by revolutionizing how rockets are built. SpaceX is not just creating spacecraft, it's laying the groundwork for humanity's interplanetary future. As the Star Factory ramps up to full production, potentially churning out thousands of Starships annually, we may see a significant shift in our approach to space travel. Lower costs and increased accessibility could usher in a new era of scientific discovery, space-based industries, and even tourism beyond Earth's orbit. More importantly, the Star Factory could be the key to realizing Musk's vision of a self-sufficient city on Mars. While challenges remain, the Star Factory is a testament to human ingenuity and ambition, possibly marking the beginning of our journey to become a multi-planet species. The tallest building in the U.S. is coming, and it's expected to reach a staggering height. A new skyscraper is set to take the title of the tallest building in the U.S., and it's not the usual suspects like NYC, Chicago, or L.A. Instead, this record-breaking tower will rise in Oklahoma City, right in the heartland of America. Named the Boardwalk at Bricktown, the tower, designed by Office AEO and developed by Madison Capital, will stand at an astonishing 1,907 feet. This height surpasses the current tallest building, One World Trade Center in New York City, by about 200 feet. In January, the Oklahoma City Council approved a modification request from the developers to increase the tower's height from the initially approved 1,750 feet, but now it'll be 1,907 feet. This approval not only makes it the tallest building in the U.S., but also the 6th tallest in the world. The base will have open plazas and space for retail and dining. Above that, 4 towers will rise. 3 will be 345 feet tall, while the 4th, Legend Tower, reaches 1,907 feet. This height honors the year Oklahoma became the 46th state in 1907. The building will include a hotel, 1,776 residential units, and 110,000 square feet for dining, retail, and entertainment. If built as planned, it'll be the 18th building to become the tallest in the U.S. It'll be the first in Oklahoma and one of the few outside New York City. Before One World Trade Center held the record, the Willis, formerly Sears Tower in Chicago, was the tallest. How does it compare to other skyscrapers in the U.S.? Well, if all goes well, this new skyscraper will dethrone One World Trade Center in New York. In the heart of Lower Manhattan, the One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower, stands tall as a symbol of resilience, solidarity, and hope. It reaches a height of 1,776 feet, honoring the year the Declaration of Independence was signed. Finished in 2014, it stands on the site of the original World Trade Center, which was tragically destroyed in the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks. Designed by David Childs of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, One World Trade Center is a masterpiece of both architecture and symbolism. Its modern glass exterior, topped by a spire, is a testament to the American spirit. Besides its symbolic value, it offers amazing views of the Manhattan skyline, cutting-edge office space, and top-notch amenities. Its observatory, located on the 100th, 101st, and 102nd floors, provides visitors with stunning views over New York City, serving as a poignant reminder of the city's enduring strength and vitality. Next in line is Central Park Tower, rising majestically over New York's skyline. The residential tower, located in Manhattan next to Central Park, symbolizes modern architecture and luxury living. At 1,550 feet, it's the highest residential skyscraper in the world and the second tallest structure in the U.S. Designed by Adrian Smith and Gordon Gill Architecture, its sleek glass facade blends seamlessly with the cityscape. Inside the Central Park Tower, you get luxurious condominiums with spacious floor plans and exclusive features like a fitness center, a pool, and a private club. But the real highlight is its stunning views. Residents can enjoy expansive views of Central Park, the Manhattan skyline, and beyond, providing an idyllic escape from the city's hustle and bustle. An iconic symbol of Chicago's skyline, the Willis Tower, offers evidence of both metropolitan significance and creative architecture. Completed in 1973 as the Sears Tower, it held the title of the world's tallest building for over a quarter century. Designed by Bruce Graham of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, this 1,450-foot tall structure, with its bundled tube architecture and striking black exterior, is a lasting representation of Chicago's architectural legacy and thriving economy. The Willis Tower offers a wide range of facilities and attractions in addition to its striking size. The famous glass-bottom ledge offers thrill-seekers an exhilarating experience, while the building's 103rd floor skydeck offers tourists unmatched panoramic views of the city and its surroundings. It's also a center of business, with a large number of offices, shops, and restaurants housed inside its walls. It serves as a hub for business, tourism, and cultural activities due to its strategic position in Chicago's thriving Loop neighborhood. In the heart of Manhattan, New York City, stands 111 West 57th Street, known as the Steinway Tower. This remarkable skyscraper at 1,428 feet is one of the world's tallest and slimmest structures, transforming the city's skyline with its unique design. Designed by Shop Architects in partnership with JDS Development Group and Property Markets Group, the tower combines modern sophistication with historic charm. Its slender design features state-of-the-art engineering and technology, paying homage to New York's pre-war towers. The tower's terracotta and bronze facade radiates a timeless beauty, reflecting the sky's changing colors. Inside, luxurious living areas offer expansive views of Central Park and the Manhattan skyline. Residents enjoy a range of facilities, including a private fitness center, pool, lounge spaces, and concierge services, ensuring unmatched luxury and convenience. Another towering masterpiece in New York is One Vanderbilt, next to the Grand Central Terminal in Midtown Manhattan. Rising to 1,401 feet, this skyscraper is a bold example of contemporary architecture and sustainable development. Built by Kohn Pedersen Fox Associates, One Vanderbilt features a sleek glass facade and a unique crown, making a dramatic statement while blending with its surrounding cityscape. The tower's eco-friendly features and state-of-the-art design have earned it a LEED Platinum certification, showcasing its dedication to sustainability. Inside, One Vanderbilt offers Class A office space, retail stores, and restaurants, making it a hub of activity and a magnet for business, travel, and cultural discovery. The upper floor Skyline Observatory provides visitors with breathtaking views of the city, offering a unique perspective on New York's landmarks and bustling streets. Rising above the Manhattan skyline, 432 Park Avenue is a stunning work of architectural art with streamlined and elegant style. This residential tower redefines luxury living in the heart of New York City, soaring to an impressive height of 1,396 feet. Designed by Raphael Viñoly Architects, 432 Park Avenue stands out with its square footprint and tall vertical lines, giving it a minimalistic look. Among the high residential structures in the Western Hemisphere, its sleek concrete and glass facade reaches remarkable heights. Inside, spacious, well-designed living areas welcome residents, offering expansive views of the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame iconic landmarks like Central Park, the Empire State Building, and the Statue of Liberty, providing an immersive experience. The tower also offers a range of amenities, including a private restaurant, fitness center, spa, and pool, ensuring residents enjoy the pinnacle of contemporary urban life. Above Chicago's renowned skyline, the Trump International Hotel and Tower stands as a testament to the city's architectural brilliance, luxury, and beauty. Designed by renowned architect Adrian Smith of Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, this landmark skyscraper reaches a height of 1,389 feet, making it one of the tallest buildings in the United States. Situated along the picturesque Chicago River, the Trump Tower features a sleek glass facade and prominent setbacks, creating a striking visual presence. The shimmering exterior reflects the changing colors of the sky, creating a breathtaking display day or night. Inside, the Trump Tower offers a top-notch hotel experience with luxurious rooms, modern conveniences, elegant furnishings, and stunning views of the city and Lake Michigan. The hotel's renowned restaurants, lounges, and spa enhance the experience for visitors, offering a sanctuary of luxury and leisure in the middle of a bustling city. Its prime downtown location provides easy access to Chicago's main attractions, including Millennium Park, the Magnificent Mile, and the Art Institute of Chicago, making it the perfect destination for both business and leisure travelers. Next up is Hudson Yards, a striking addition to New York City's skyline and a symbol of modernism and creativity. Standing at 1,296 feet, the skyscraper is one of the tallest buildings in the United States and is part of the vibrant Hudson Yards development on Manhattan's West Side. Designed by Kohn Pedersen Fox Associates, 30 Hudson Yards features a sleek, glass-clad facade that blends perfectly with the urban environments, offering expansive views of the Hudson River and the Manhattan skyline. Inside, the tower hosts a mix of retail stores, restaurants, office spaces, and cultural attractions, catering to the needs of both residents and visitors. Its strategic location in Hudson Yards makes it a bustling hub of activity, drawing people all over the world. The building is also home to the tallest outdoor skydeck in the Western Hemisphere, Edge, on the 100th floor. This thrilling platform with a glass floor offers unobstructed views of New York City, providing an unforgettable experience. Another iconic landmark is the Empire State Building, a timeless symbol of New York City's skyline. Completed in 1931 during the Great Depression, it reached a then record height of 1,454 feet, making it the tallest building in the world at that time. Designed by Shreve, Lamb, and Harmon, the Empire State Building features a dramatic limestone facade and a sleek, tapered form that defines its unique modern Art Deco design. Its famous spire, often illuminated with vibrant lights on significant occasions, inspires millions worldwide. The Empire State Building houses office spaces, shops, and observation decks, including the well-known 86th floor observation deck, which offers stunning panoramic views of New York City and beyond. The building attracts visitors from around the globe with its exhibitions and events, celebrating its rich history and cultural significance. Throughout its illustrious history, the Empire State Building has stood as a testament to the resilience, fortitude, and unwavering spirit of New York City, remaining a source of wonder and appreciation for its lasting heritage as a center of ambition, culture, and innovation. Finally, the Bank of America Tower in Midtown Manhattan is a magnificent example of environmentally friendly building practices and corporate social responsibility. Standing at 1,200 feet, it's one of the city's tallest structures, completed in 2009. Designed by Cook Fox Architects in association with Adamson Associates, the tower features a sleek contemporary design that incorporates cutting-edge sustainable technology. Its glass curtain wall facade optimizes natural light while minimizing energy use, earning it LEED Platinum certification, the highest standard for environmental performance. Inside, the Bank of America Tower offers modern retail stores, office spaces, and facilities aimed at boosting tenant productivity and well-being. Every aspect of the building, from its rainwater collection and recycling facilities to its high-efficiency HVAC systems, is designed to reduce environmental impact. The tower's operations and activities also reflect a commitment to sustainability and community involvement, supporting local charities and promoting diversity and well-being amongst its staff. The Bank of America Tower stands as a living example of social and environmental responsibility in the heart of New York City. Bjarke Ingels is designing a new city for American entrepreneur Mark Lohr. Announced on social media on September 1, 2021, the city, named Telosa, aims to set a global standard for urban living. The plan is to build it from the ground up on a 150,000-acre site in the U.S., which is currently being scouted. Telosa will eventually house 5 million people and seeks to expand human potential, serving as a blueprint for future generations. Lohr amassed his wealth through savvy business deals, selling Jet.com to Walmart for $3.3 billion in 2016 and Diapers.com to Amazon for $545 million in 2010. He plans to fund a significant portion of this $500 billion project using his own resources, while also seeking contributions from philanthropists, government grants, and private investors. The proposed city aims to redefine urban living with features like indoor farming, energy-efficient buildings, autonomous electric vehicles, high-speed transportation systems, and a novel land ownership model designed to reduce the wealth gap, which Lohr refers to as equitism. In Telosa, the land would remain under city ownership, allowing individuals to build and sell homes. As the city expands, the increase in land and value would funnel back into the Telosa Foundation, with the profits used to ensure equal access to healthcare, education, parks, safe streets, and efficient transportation. Lohr is considering Utah as a potential location for his new city, Telosa, along with other states like Nevada, Idaho, Arizona, Texas, and regions in the Appalachians. His decision hinges on various factors, including economic and regulatory policies, regional taxation, industry and workforce dynamics, energy, food, water, waste management, climate, infrastructure, land availability, and livability. Utah's history of fostering new communities based on religious or economic ideals makes it a compelling choice. The state has been a cradle for visionary settlements since 1845, when Brigham Young, leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, identified Salt Lake City as a new home for his followers. Arriving in 1847, Young and 12,000 pioneers sought a sanctuary out of reach from the U.S. government, which wasn't achieved until Utah joined the Union in 1896. Under Young's leadership, the community embarked on several economic missions across the region, like the Iron Mission in Cedar City, the Cotton Mission in St. George, and the Lead Mission in Las Vegas. These communities were based on communal living, with no private property and shared resources including housing, dining halls, and uniform clothing. Additionally, the establishment of ZCMI, America's first department store, was meant to protect the community from volatile capitalistic markets by ensuring that all goods were bought within the community. This was part of a broader vision to create a self-sustaining utopia isolated from economic fluctuations and downturns. However, this vision of utopia faced significant challenges. The missions largely failed within a year due to internal conflicts, selfish behaviors, and dissatisfaction with the communal goods, highlighting the complexities and challenges of creating an idealized society. Utah's vast open spaces and natural beauty have long made it a magnet for those who value independence and minimal government interference, explains Paul Reeve, a history professor at the University of Utah. Today, Utah is gaining recognition as an ideal place for living and starting businesses, with cities like Provo, Orem, and Salt Lake City ranking high on the Milken Institute's list of best-performing cities due to their job growth and wage increases. Utah tech billionaire Ryan Smith highlights this shift in perception about the state. He told Fox Business that while attracting talent to Utah was challenging 15 years ago, it's now a desirable destination for many, with a reputation that's attracting new residents. However, not everyone is sold on the idea of Utah being as a promised land. Luke Gunderson, a founder of Beehive Ventures in Lehi, acknowledges Utah's strong work ethic and youthful demographics as advantages for businesses, yet he hesitates to call it a mecca. One of Utah's most attractive qualities for new projects like Mark Lohr's proposed city, Telosa, is its abundance of open land. Lohr's team has been engaging with local business leaders and residents and plans to start discussions with state officials. Ben Kolender, Salt Lake City's Director of Economic Development, notes that if Lohr's team is looking for desert terrain, Utah's got plenty to offer, along with a strong demand for housing. However, developing in Utah is not without its challenges, particularly in terms of water. The state's experiencing one of its most severe droughts, and with the Colorado River drying up, water scarcity is a significant concern. Lohr's innovative approaches to water management could be crucial. If successful, they could serve as a model for other cities, but failure could exacerbate an already dire situation. Building a city involves more than just planning. It requires a robust infrastructure for services like garbage collection, road paving, and permit processing, as well as a diverse economy to weather economic downturns, Kullander points out. He's intrigued by Lohr's vision, but remains aware of the practical challenges involved. Lohr's team, consisting of volunteers and paid staff, is meticulously reviewing potential sites and plans to select a state partner by the end of the year, with a location pinpointed by early 2023. Tolosa aims to be a transformative city, seating initially with 50,000 people from diverse backgrounds and potentially growing to house 5 million. The city's economic strategy involves creating a land value that could generate significant financial assets, potentially transforming the wealth and income landscape. Lohr and his team are aware of the pitfalls that have doomed other utopian projects and are determined to learn from these lessons. John Mallon, a founding member of Tolosa, emphasizes that while their solutions aim to be innovative, they're grounded in research and facts, not merely utopian ideals. Tolosa is still in its formative stages, with its planners currently surveying potential sites across Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Texas, and even the Appalachian region, though the latter seems less likely. While aiming for a 2030 start for residents to begin moving in, the exact location has yet to be decided, with a focus on acquiring cheap land to facilitate its unique economic model. Lohr plans to finance the city by attracting investors and philanthropists to purchase the land that will then be donated to a community endowment. This endowment will manage the land and use any appreciation in value to fund essential public services like healthcare, education, and support for small businesses. However, there are critical voices that question the implications of such a project. Can a capitalist like Lohr truly create a city that embodies inclusivity? Lohr suggests that his model of equitism, which rethinks land ownership, will set new standards for urban living and serve as a model for future cities. He emphasizes a city designed with pedestrians and cyclists in mind. Yet sustainability and inclusivity might not always align. As climate change intensifies and resources in coastal areas dwindle, people will likely move inland. In an unequal world, it's often communities of color that suffer the most. This raises a crucial question. For whom is Tolosa really being built? Who are the 5 million people who can afford to live there? Realizing a utopian vision like Tolosa requires widespread support. Critics argue that initiatives like the Red, Black, and Green New Deal, which advocate for environmental changes led by those most affected by climate change, might be more apt. Mark Lohr could take inspiration from philanthropist Mackenzie Scott, who has significantly impacted social issues through her unrestricted grants aimed at helping marginalized communities affected by the pandemic. It's clear that billionaires alone won't solve the problems of climate change or societal inequities. They can, however, contribute significantly to making cities more sustainable. With America's infrastructure urgently needing an overhaul to address systemic racism, focusing on updating existing structures with sustainable technologies like solar energy might be more practical and immediately beneficial than building new cities from scratch. This approach might not bring the same recognition, but it promises broader, faster benefits for many. Inspired by the ideas in Henry George's 19th century book, Progress and Poverty, Lohr's model seeks to leverage land value for community benefit, aiming to mitigate the boom and bust cycles of capitalism and reduce wealth disparities. Projected to grow significantly over the next few decades, Tolosa's goals are ambitious. To expand from 30,000 acres housing 1 million people in the next 10 to 20 years to 150,000 acres accommodating 5 million people within 40 years, maintaining a population density similar to that of San Francisco. Lohr contrasts Tolosa with other contemporary urban developments such as Neom in Saudi Arabia by emphasizing that unlike typical real estate ventures, Tolosa starts with a people-centered approach, focusing on community values and missions from the outset. Renowned Danish architect Bjarke Ingels has been enlisted to lead the design efforts, bringing a blend of Scandinavian social consciousness and American freedom and opportunity to the project. Ingels and his team, part of the Junto Group, are tasked with ensuring that Tolosa exemplifies sustainability and equity, drawing on a diverse array of professionals from various fields to bring this new city to life. Utopian economic models, though historically scrutinized for their practicality, are experiencing a revival among affluent innovators. Mark Gillum, an urban design professor at the University of Oregon, points out that such models often clash with human nature, which tend to be inherently self-interested. He observes that most cities develop organically rather than through a top-down economic model. Despite these challenges, the allure of creating a perfect city continues. Bill Gates is planning a smart city on 2,800 acres outside Phoenix, while Jeffrey Burns, a cryptocurrency millionaire, envisions a smart city spanning 67,000 acres in Nevada. Even Prince Charles has initiated Poundbury in England, a unique community with no zoning laws designed to minimize car usage. Gillum suggests that these projects often involve a significant ego drive and a desire to make a lasting impact. In Utah, this trend connects with a historical context of seeking a promised land, or Utahopia as some call it. Ben Collender, Salt Lake City Director of Economic Development, notes that Utah's foundational values continue to inspire innovative projects. One such project is Summit Powder Mountain, a ski-in, ski-out tech community developed by a group of young entrepreneurs. They transformed Powder Mountain into a hub for the tech elite, featuring futuristic homes and quarterly events focused on entrepreneurship and social consciousness. High-profile figures like Richard Branson and Reed Hastings are regular visitors, drawn by the community's emphasis on closeness and collaboration. Utah also hosts Daybreak, a 4,000-acre planned community in South Jordan that emphasizes energy efficiency and sustainability. The community includes homes on Ochre Lake, funded in part by a 1% surcharge on home sales, which supports local amenities and cultural activities. A central stage attracts restaurants and performances, enhancing community engagement. Additionally, developers plan to construct The Point, a carless community built on 600 acres of state-owned land. This project aims to foster innovation and technological advancements, reinforcing Utah's role as a testing ground for forward-thinking community projects.
The city of New York is sinking. New research says the combination of massive skyscrapers and sea level rise could make the city more prone to natural disasters.
New York City is sinking, and it's not just a slow-motion disaster. It's partly due to the sheer weight of its skyscrapers. This alarming new research reveals a ticking time bomb beneath the city that never sleeps. The Big Apple is subsiding by about 1 to 2 millimeters each year on average, some areas sinking twice as fast. Think that's bad? It gets worse. The city's descent is magnifying the already terrifying threat of sea level rise. As global warming melts glaciers and expands seawater, New York's waters have climbed by about 9 inches since 1950. By the end of the century, major flooding events could be up to 4 times more frequent due to this combination of sea level rise and stronger hurricanes caused by climate change. But New York has a plan to stop this. Keep watching to find out what it is. Rising sea levels are bad news for many cities, and New York City's feeling the impact. The metropolis is sinking by about 1 to 2 millimeters a year, increasing its flood risk. With rising sea levels and a sinking city, the threat becomes even more severe, especially with the weight of Manhattan's skyscrapers amplifying the effect. New York City has over 1 million buildings, and the skyscrapers are particularly heavy, weighing 1.5 to 2 tons per cubic meter. The Empire State Building, made of steel, granite, and limestone, weighs about 370,000 tons. This weight isn't a problem on bedrock, but near the coast on softer ground, it contributes to sinking. Geophysicist Tom Parsons and his team estimate that the city's buildings weigh about 764 million tons. Different surface types in the city respond differently to this weight. Clay soils with artificial fills, common in Brooklyn, yield slightly, leading to subsidence of 7.5 to 60 centimeters. Other soils experience less subsidence, and rock-based areas see as little as half a centimeter. The scientific team warns against ignoring the double threat of sinking soil and rising sea levels. Since 1950, New York's coastal water levels have risen by about 23 centimeters. The east coast of the U.S. faces a particularly high risk from rising sea levels. Hurricanes frequently cause flooding, as seen with Hurricane Ida in 2021, which overwhelmed New York City's drainage systems. Frequent contact with salt water weakens materials like concrete and steel. Other problems include a lack of floodplain standards, additional sinking due to groundwater extraction, and a lack of sediment in New York Harbor. Sediment from the East River and Harlem River used to protect the city from strong northeast winds and hurricanes. Lower Manhattan's particularly at risk, with its southern tip only 1 to 2 meters above sea level. In October 2012, Hurricane Sandy caused over $70 billion in damages, mostly from flooding. In Rockaway Beach, homes were not only flooded but also caught fire, destroying 200 homes in Breezy Point. Since then, $1 billion federally funded program has fortified 9 miles of Rockaway's Atlantic-facing beach. The boardwalk was rebuilt in concrete to double as flood protection. Quarry stone groins were added to break the waves, and sand dunes were underpinned with a stone-filled trench and concrete wall. However, the bay side of Rockaway Beach has not received as much attention. If another storm like Sandy occurs, it could cause severe drainage from the other direction. A recent proposal by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has allocated a staggering $52 billion to protect the New York region from future storms. The plan includes a system of sea barriers and gates across the mouths of major bays and inlets along New York Harbor, and a seawall encircling Manhattan to barricade the island against the harbor that has long defined its identity. If all goes smoothly, construction on the barriers could kick off as soon as 2030, with an expected date of completion in 2044. However, critics argue that the cost analysis used by state and federal governments skewed toward protecting property rather than maximizing protection for the largest number of people, regardless of their economic status. For instance, a $1 billion plan to protect part of Lower Manhattan would provide direct flood protection to just 62 condominium and rental buildings, 21 commercial properties, and 19 public buildings. So, what's the best solution that'll actually solve this problem? The Asser Levee renovation, completed in 2022, is part of the East Side Coastal Resiliency, the largest urban resiliency project currently underway in the U.S. Over the next 3 years, at a total cost of $1.8 billion, ESCR will reshape 2.5 miles of Lower Manhattan shoreline. But ESCR is just one piece of a much larger $2.7 billion initiative called the Big U, a series of contiguous flood resilience projects that run from Asser Levee near 25th Street around the southern tip of Manhattan and up to Battery Park City along the Hudson. When finished, the Big U will create 5.5 miles of new park space designed to protect over 60,000 residents and billions of dollars in real estate from sea level rise and storm surges. Residents of public housing rely on a narrow park to buffer their homes from a river that's already risen 8 inches. The Big U was conceived after 2012 Superstorm Sandy, which flooded 17% of New York City and caused $19 billion of damage. Like Hurricane Katrina back in 2005, Sandy pushed New York and other flood-prone coastal U.S. cities, including Boston, Norfolk, Charleston, Miami, and San Francisco, to embrace the Dutch concept of living with water, which emphasizes building infrastructure that can both repel and absorb water while also providing recreational and open space. In New York, ESCR, like any large infrastructure project in a densely populated area, has faced many challenges. Despite this, significant progress is being made. The ESCR project area covers a flood-prone wedge of Manhattan's natural topography, a pinch point between two higher stretches of shoreline. 400 years ago, when the island was inhabited by the Lenni Lenape, this shoreline was woods and marsh that never rose more than a few feet above sea level. Tidal creeks drained from the uplands, dense with American chestnut, aster, and goldenrod, winding through Spartan and meadows to the river. Today, that landscape's buried beneath 4 public housing complexes whose roughly 10,000 residents depend on East River Park to protect their homes from a waterway that's risen 8 inches since the mid-20th century. The East Side Coastal Resilience ESCR project is the first segment of the Big U to get started, and it hasn't been an easy ride. From debates about its final design to budget cuts and new concerns about climate change risks, including this year's extreme rain events, the path has been rocky. The original 2014 design aimed to preserve East River Park's running track, tennis courts, and shady groves of pine oak and cherry trees. But in 2018, Mayor Bill de Blasio's administration quietly changed the plan. They argued it'd be faster and cheaper to clear the park, raise the landscape with over 1 million tons of fill, and then rebuild on top. Under the permeable buffers championed by the Dutch, the raised park would act more like a hard barrier. While some opposed the redesign, many residents of the public housing complexes, which are at high risk of flooding, support it. In fall 2021, demolition crews began their work. The new park, with its pathways and vegetation beds, will act as a berm to keep water out of the city streets. Right now, a fence divides East River Park in half. In the southern section, new steel sheet piles stand at the water's edge, about 8 feet above the original grade. The height can protect the adjacent city streets from a once-in-100-year storm like Sandy. Massive excavators are raising the park's elevation with fill from quarries to upstate New York. Once completed, the park will feature pathways and vegetation beds winding around sports fields, an amphitheater, and playgrounds, creating a terrace landscape that'll keep water out of city streets. More flood walls and retractable gates will run the park's length and extend into surrounding streets, upgrading old infrastructure to prevent stormwater from mixing with wastewater during floods. North of the fence, construction is almost complete at the Stuyvesant Cove Park, a narrow quarter-mile strip of land just south of Asser Levee Playground. Though the park may lack the original design's rain gardens and water-absorbent features, Stuyvesant Co. stays true to another Dutch principle, blending hard infrastructure into the landscape. Walking and biking paths wind through garden beds planted with salt-tolerant native plants like viburnum, wild cherry, and milkweed. The park's concrete flood wall and 2 retractable steel floodgates, one 42 feet long and the other 77 feet long, seamlessly blend with the rising topography. Other segments of the Big U are also in progress. At the Battery, the southern tip of the city, the waterfront's being elevated with fill. Next, they'll install flood walls, higher capacity drainage, and new park spaces. Similar projects to protect the historic South Street Seaport area and the financial district are still in the planning and design stages. Once completed, the Big U will safeguard the financial district, a hub of global economic activity, and tens of thousands of New York's most vulnerable residents. In other boroughs, there's even been more progress. On Staten Island, the Living Breakwaters project, another winner of the Rebuild by Design competition, is on track for completion next year. This project features a network of breakwaters off Staten Island's southern tip to reduce wave action and provide habitat for marine life. The state's also bought and removed homes on Staten Island's shore to allow for periodic flooding. In Queens at Rockaway Beach, a steel-reinforced concrete boardwalk has replaced the wooden one lost during Sandy, and a concrete retaining wall helps keep sand in a new dune system from washing away during large storm surges. The Dutch-inspired approach to resiliency planning is gaining traction in other U.S. cities. Across the Hudson River in Hoboken, New Jersey, one of the most innovative flood projects in the U.S. is underway. Unlike East River Park, Hoboken's implemented not just flood walls and sewer upgrades, but also has park spaces that can hold and absorb excess water. This makes the city much better prepared to handle storm surges and the increasingly common rain bombs due to climate change. Okay, so imagine a bottleneck so critical that its disruption could halt entire industries and cost millions of jobs. That's the situation with the Soo Locks, where outdated infrastructure is a ticking time bomb for economic chaos. The Soo Locks, located in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, are operated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But what are locks exactly? Think of locks like water elevators for ships. They move vessels between bodies of water at different elevations, letting them navigate changes in water levels smoothly. At the Soo Locks, these water elevators help ships bypass a 21-foot waterfall drop in the St. Mary's River, making safe passages possible between Lake Superior and the lower Great Lakes. These locks are a big deal for the U.S. economy, moving 75 million tons of cargo and around 7,000 passengers every year. They're especially important for the steel industry, as a large chunk of U.S. iron ore passes through this narrow corridor. Without the Soo Locks functioning properly, the ripple effects could be massive, disrupting supply chains and putting countless jobs at risk. Currently, the Soo Locks feature 2 main locks, the MacArthur Lock and the Poe Lock. These engineering marvels are more than just passageways. They're the backbone of the Great Lakes shipping system and a critical piece of the U.S. economy. The Poe Lock in particular handles the largest vessels transporting iron ore and other essential commodities, making it indispensable for industries across the nation, especially steel manufacturing, which heavily relies on the iron ore shipped through these waters. Any disruption of the Soo Locks could send shockwaves through the economy, impacting supply chains in industries far beyond the Great Lakes region. That makes keeping the locks running smoothly not just an economic priority, but also a matter of national security. A 2015 study by the Department of Homeland Security highlighted what could happen if Poe Lock were to close for 6 months. A staggering, get this, $1.1 trillion economic loss and the potential for 11 million job losses across the country. That alone underscores just how important these locks are, not only to transportation, but also a key part of the country's security infrastructure. Originally conceived in the mid-19th century, the Soo Locks were able to connect the vast resources of Lake Superior to the rest of the Great Lakes. Now they're undergoing a major upgrade. The project aims to replace 2 smaller locks with one that matches the size of the Poe Lock, 1,200 feet long, 110 feet wide, and 32 feet deep. Currently the only lock capable of handling modern Laker shipping vessels on the St. Mary's River between Michigan and Ontario, Canada. The Soo Locks have been a cornerstone of American trade since the late 18th century. The first efforts to construct these locks began with the Northwest Fur Company in 1798, but this initial attempt was thwarted during the War of 1812 when American forces destroyed the lock to disrupt British trade. The first U.S. lock, known as the State Lock, was built in 1855 and operated by the state of Michigan. This project, alongside the Erie Canal, marked a significant step in U.S. engineering and commerce, facilitating the transportation of vital resources for industrial growth. As demand for shipping increased, the Soo Locks complex expanded, adding several new locks over time. The Whitesell Lock, completed in 1881, accommodated larger vessels but was eventually replaced by the MacArthur Lock in 1943, built during World War II to ensure a steady flow of materials for wartime logistics. The Poe Lock, introduced in 1896, got upgraded in 1968 to handle even larger ships, while the Davison Sabin locks, completed in the early 20th century, were decommissioned in 2010 as shipping needs and technology evolved. The scope of the newly awarded contract includes constructing 21-chamber monoliths for both the north and south walls of the new lock. Each monolith is about 44 feet wide and 70 feet tall, built by pouring concrete in 5-foot-high lifts. The work's being led by Kokosing Alberici Trailer, a joint venture involving Kokosing Industrial, Alberici Constructors, and Trailer Brothers, under a $1.1 billion base contract awarded in 2022 for the third, final, and largest phase of the lock project. The contract allows early work on the project while funding continues to roll in. So far, 3 other contract options worth a combined $281.3 million have been awarded. Since late 2022, the contractor has been busy placing cells for upstream and downstream cofferdams, starting construction on a bridge to a mid-river hydropower plant, stabilizing existing structures, and preparing for further dewatering and excavation. Crews have been busy dewatering the site, handling electrical work, building a bridge to a new power plant, demolishing the old Sabin lock, filling up the old Davis lock chamber, and excavating bedrock to start pouring concrete for the new lock's walls this fall. While the MacArthur Lock is still operational for smaller vessels, the Poe Lock is the only one that can handle the massive 1,000-foot-long ships carrying millions of tons of iron ore from mines in Minnesota and northern Michigan to steel mills along the Great Lakes. The Poe Lock is critical, but it's also operating beyond its intended lifespan. It's 55 years old with a dedicated lifespan of 50 years, making it the weak link in the supply chain of iron ore. According to Molly Mahoney, the new lock project manager, even a brief unscheduled outage of the Poe Lock could disrupt 75% of the nation's high-strength steel production, causing a shutdown in automobile, appliance, and heavy equipment manufacturing nationwide. A 6-month outage could lead to 11 million lost jobs and a staggering $1.1 trillion economic impact. Maintenance work on the Poe Lock, including replacing some components, will continue into 2025 to keep it running as long as possible. The new lock, being constructed where the Sabin lock once stood, will match the Poe Lock's dimensions, 1,200 feet long, 110 feet wide, and 32 feet deep. To date, the project has secured $1.9 billion in funding, but more is needed. Despite full project approval, the next steps hinge on navigating the congressional appropriations process, where funding for the remaining work competes with other national priorities. Kevin McDaniels, deputy engineer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Detroit District, highlighted that while estimates are good at specific points, the total cost of the new lock is likely to be under $3 billion. With continued funding, the project could stay on track and finish within the $2.9 billion range. Once completed, the existing Poe Lock will continue to operate alongside the new lock, ensuring that the critical passage of goods through the Great Lakes remains uninterrupted and secure for the future. The new lock project at the Soo Locks faces several challenges, including rising construction costs, worker shortages, and the constant need for additional funding. Initially estimated at $922 million, the total cost of this project has nearly tripled, now approaching $3.2 billion. This increase is largely due to inflation and higher material costs, which are affecting construction projects across the country. Funding remains a critical priority, with an additional $629 million needed to keep the project on track and avoid further delays. Worker shortages also pose a significant hurdle. A lack of skilled labor has impacted construction efforts, leading to delays and increased costs. This is a common issue across many industries, and for a project of this scale, having the necessary workforce is essential to meet deadlines and maintain progress. Despite these obstacles, the existing locks, including the Poe and MacArthur locks, will continue to operate during construction. This careful planning is crucial to ensure that the shipping traffic remains uninterrupted, minimizing economic impact. The Poe lock, although aging and requiring frequent maintenance, plays a vital role in the U.S. supply chain, particularly for the steel industry. Keeping it operational while the new lock's being built is essential to avoid the kind of economic ripple effects that a prolonged closure could cause. Construction is currently in its second phase, focusing on stabilizing the approach walls to accommodate modern vessels. This phase is expected to be completed by summer 2024, with significant progress already made, including the placement of numerous concrete caps and ongoing structural work. Once completed, the new lock will significantly enhance the Soo Lock's capacity and efficiency, providing a more reliable passage for the largest vessels that are critical to U.S. commerce. The project aims not just to maintain, but to improve the flow of goods through the Great Lakes, ensuring that industries dependent on this vital waterway can continue to thrive. With both the new and updated Pollock working together, the Sulaks will be better equipped to handle the demands of modern trade, providing a substantial boost to the economy and reinforcing the strength of a U.S. shipping system. Despite these challenges, the project's completion will mark a transformative improvement in U.S. infrastructure, safeguarding the future of trade through this critical passage. Humans have always been driven by a desire to explore, discover, and understand the world and beyond that surrounds us. This curiosity is an integral part of our nature, propelling us to push boundaries and achieve remarkable feats. In this spirit of exploration, NASA and its partners are preparing for a historic mission back to the moon. After 2 test missions, Artemis 3, currently slated for 2026, will see humanity return to the lunar surface for the first time in over 50 years. This mission will be groundbreaking as it will involve the first human exploration of the region near the lunar South Pole. But how? Let's find out. NASA's Artemis program isn't just about reliving the glory days of Apollo, it's about setting up a lasting presence on the moon. This means building bases in lunar orbit and on the moon's surface. But first, NASA aims to get humans back on the moon by the mid-2020s. Artemis 1, the first mission in this program, launched in November 2022. It was an uncrewed mission that tested the SLS, or Space Launch System, in the Orion module. Artemis 1 traveled 450,000 kilometers to the moon, orbited just 130 kilometers above its surface, and then ventured 64,373 kilometers into deep space. After 25 and a half days, it returned to Earth, splashing down to the Pacific Ocean near California. This mission carried several science and technology experiments to expand our knowledge of the moon and deep space. It also included 3 mannequins or moonikins, dressed in the same spacesuits that future astronauts are going to wear. These provided critical data on the conditions humans will experience. Special passengers, Shaun the Sheep and Snoopy, also made the journey, with Snoopy floating outside the Orion capsule. Despite a few launch delays due to engine issues and storms, Artemis 1 successfully lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center on November 16, 2022. The SLS rocket generated an impressive 8.8 million pounds of thrust, making it more powerful than the Saturn V rockets used in the Apollo missions. The spacecraft performed a lunar flyby, orbited the moon, and set a record for the farthest distance traveled by a spacecraft designed for humans. It then used the moon's gravity to slingshot back to Earth, proving the system's readiness for future crewed missions. The next mission, Artemis 2, will be the first crewed flight. Scheduled for September next year, it will take a 4-person crew 8,889 kilometers beyond the moon before returning to Earth. This mission will take 8 to 10 days, testing the Orion module and its life support systems. Preparation for Artemis 2 are well underway, with testing on the Orion module and the SLS core stage ongoing. Artemis 2 will be a pioneering crewed spaceflight for the Artemis program, taking humans farther than they've ever been in space. After getting launched on the SLS rocket, the crew will fly the Orion module to perform a lunar flyby, then come back to Earth. The mission will collect valuable flight test data on the Orion module and its capabilities, including its life support systems. The European service module for the mission was completed and handed over to NASA in 2023, and testing is underway on the Orion module. Artemis 3, planned for September 2026, aims to land humans on the moon for the first time since Apollo 17. This mission will use the Orion spacecraft to transport the crew in SpaceX's Starship for the lunar landing. Before the crew launch, SpaceX will send a storage depot and reusable tankers to fuel the Starship. The crew will dock with the Starship in lunar orbit, and 2 astronauts will descend to the moon's surface while the other 2 remain in orbit. The target landing area is around the moon's south pole, a region that promises exciting scientific discoveries despite its challenging conditions. NASA's Orion spacecraft will be the crew's ride to and from Earth and into and out of lunar orbit. Orion's the only spacecraft capable of returning crews to Earth at lunar re-entry velocities. On the successful Artemis 1 mission, Orion's uniquely designed heat shield was tested under these extreme re-entry conditions. 4 astronauts will depart from Launch Pad 39B at Kennedy Space Center in Florida atop the SLS, the only rocket powerful enough to send Orion, its crew, and their supplies to the moon in a single launch. The crew will be selected from among the most diverse astronaut corps in history, each equipped with unique skills and intensively trained. First, the crew will launch to Earth orbit, where they will perform system checks and solar panel adjustments on Orion. Then, a powerful push from SLS's interim cryogenic propulsion stage will help Orion perform a trans-lunar injection maneuver, setting its course to the moon. For several days, the crew will travel toward the moon and perform corrective engine burns to intercept the moon's gravitational field. At the right time and location, Orion will perform a series of 2 engine burns to place the spacecraft in a lunar near-rectilinear halo orbit, NRHO. From hundreds of potential orbits, NASA selected NRHO to achieve long-term Artemis goals. NRHO will provide near-constant communications with Earth and access to sites all over the moon. Because it is gravitationally balanced between Earth and the moon, this orbit will maximize fuel efficiency. On future missions, NASA and its partners will assemble the Gateway Lunar Space Station in NRHO to serve as a hub for Artemis missions. NASA has selected SpaceX to provide the human landing system that'll transport Artemis 3 astronauts from Orion and lunar orbit to the surface of the moon and back again. SpaceX plans to use a unique concept of operations to increase the overall efficiency of their lander. After a series of tests, SpaceX will fly at least one uncrewed demo mission that lands Starship on the lunar surface. When Starship has met all NASA's requirements and high standards for crew safety, it'll be ready for its first Artemis mission. Before the crew launch, SpaceX will launch a storage depot to Earth orbit. A series of reusable tankers will carry propellant to the storage depot to fuel the human landing system. The uncrewed Starship human landing system will then launch to Earth orbit and rendezvous with the storage depot to fill its tanks before executing a trans-lunar injection engine burn and traveling approximately 6 days to NRHO, where it will await the Artemis 3 crew. When both spacecraft have arrived in NRHO, Orion will dock with the Starship human landing system in preparation for the first lunar surface expedition of the 21st century. Once the crew and supplies are ready, 2 astronauts will board the Starship and 2 will remain in the Orion. Orion will undock and back away from Starship to remain in NRHO for roughly 1 orbit around the moon, lasting about 6.5 days. This will match the length of the surface expedition, so as Orion completes its orbit, the 2-person surface crew will finish their work on the surface in time to launch back up to meet the spacecraft. NASA has its sights set on locations around the South Pole for the Artemis era of human lunar exploration. Extreme contrasting conditions make it a challenging location for Earthlings to land, live, and work. But the region's unique characteristics hold promise for unprecedented deep space scientific discoveries. Using advanced technology, including autonomous systems, the crew inside Starship will land at a carefully selected site within a 100-meter radius. After landing on the moon, the first thing the surface crew will do is check that all their systems are good to go for their stay. Once that's done, they'll take some time to rest, eat, and recharge for their first full day of work. While they're on the moon, the astronauts will be busy with scientific research inside the Starship, and will also head out for a few moonwalks to explore the surface. They'll put on advanced spacesuits provided by Axiom Space, exit through an airlock, and use Starship's elevator to get down to the surface. These new suits will allow them to move more freely and cover more ground than ever before. During their moonwalks, the astronauts will take pictures and videos, study the geology, collect samples, and gather other important data. The view from the lunar South Pole will be quite different from the old Apollo mission photos, which were taken near the moon's equator. With the sun just above the horizon, long shadows will stretch across the landscape, and the crew will use headlamps and navigational tools to explore. All the data and samples they collect will help us learn more about the South Pole region, the moon, and our solar system. Meanwhile, mission control teams on Earth will stay in touch with the crew, who will share their experiences in real time. Thanks to advanced communication technology, they'll send high-quality images and videos back to Earth, giving everyone a chance to see and feel what it's like to be on the moon. After their mission on the moon is complete, the 2 astronauts will lift off in the Starship to join their crewmates in Orion at the near-rectilinear halo orbit, NRHO. They'll spend up to 5 days in orbit, transferring samples and getting ready for the trip back to Earth. When it's time to leave, all 4 astronauts will board Orion, undock, and fire its engines to sling past the moon and head home. They'll re-enter Earth's atmosphere at around 24,850 miles an hour and splash down in the Pacific, assisted by 11 parachutes. The U.S. Coast Guard and Navy will be on hand to retrieve them and the spacecraft. Artemis 3 is a huge leap in deep space exploration. The data, samples, and observations from this mission will help us understand more about our solar system and Earth while inspiring future explorers. This mission sets the stage for regular human visits to the Moon and paves the way for human missions to Mars. What's next for Artemis? Artemis 4 in 2028, scheduled to launch that September, has a mission that will send a crew to the International Habitation Module IHAB to the Lunar Gateway. The Power and Propulsion Element and Habitation and Logistics Outpost will launch ahead of time. The Artemis 4 crew will then use the Human Landing System to explore the Moon and return to Earth in Orion. Artemis 5 for 2030 is expected to launch in March 2030. This mission will send 4 astronauts to the Lunar Gateway and deliver new elements to the station. 2 astronauts will then land near the lunar South Pole using the Blue Moon lunar lander and explore with an unpressurized lunar rover. They will then return to Earth in Orion. Artemis 6 2031. Planned for March 2031, this mission will integrate the Crew and Science Airlock module with the Gateway and complete the 4th crewed lunar surface expedition. This airlock is currently being constructed by the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. The crew will use the Human Landing System to explore the Moon and then return to Earth and Orion. Each Artemis mission builds on the last, increasing our knowledge, improving operations, and providing technology for future human missions to Mars. The journey's just begun, and with each step, we are getting closer to reaching new frontiers in space exploration. Imagine the desert, endless sand, scorching heat, and survival at its most challenging. Most of us associate these barren landscapes with cactus, camels, and the burning sun. But what if I told you that in the heart of one of the world's driest deserts, fresh seafood's being harvested? Yes, China has turned a once lifeless desert into a thriving hub for agriculture and aquaculture. In today's video, we'll explore how China accomplished this astonishing feat and what it means for the future of desert ecosystems. Over the past 30 years, China's committed to massive desert reclamation projects. These efforts included tree planting campaigns, irrigation systems, and advanced soil treatments to improve fertility. One of the most remarkable examples of this transformation can be seen in the Kabuki Desert, where the Chinese government, along with private companies like Elion Resources Group, has successfully greened large areas that were once just sand and dust. So, how does that work? China's covered the longest desert highway in Xinjiang with verdant forests by employing the world's first desert terraforming technology. Additionally, the Xinjiang Autonomous Region of China has made significant technological advancements in the fields of freshwater and saline aquaculture, which includes freshwater fish, tiger shrimp, and lobster, as reported by SCMP. This is one of the arid region's most remarkable accomplishments. Xinjiang Aquaculture Company, Shixijian, which was established in 2022, recently announced its success in a pilot project to develop technology that stimulates seawater in a fishing ground situated at the desert's border. The salinity of the natural saltwater in southern Xinjiang was near that of seawater, according to Mr. Chen Jianqing, the project supervisor. The China Association of Science and Technology published an article in the China Business Herald that stated that this would enable artificial mariculture, with the company's objective of enhancing the availability of seafood in China's inland regions. Chen stated that we capitalized on the saline alkaline soil, modified the probiotic levels, and incorporated additional micronutrients into the water to replicate the various seawater environments that are essential for the various species. This information was initially disclosed in mid-August. However, it was only recently disseminated amid concerns regarding marine security in the wake of the water discharge from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. In response to the discharge of wastewater from a nuclear facility that was devastated by the earthquake and tsunami 12 years ago, China has recently banned all Japanese seafood products. In order to reduce changes in temperature in Xinjiang, the organization maintains approximately 60 greenhouses that serve as interior ponds. The company has created 8 distinct varieties of seafood, which are initially cultivated indoors before getting relocated to outdoor wetlands. The expansion of seafood production in Xinjiang was cited by Chinese media as a typical example of how China urged local academics and officials to identify methods to modernize agriculture and guarantee the security of the supply of agricultural products. Guo Junwei, a manager at Xinjiang Benteng Biotechnology Company, disclosed that the organization sold each kilo of black tiger shrimp for 200 yuan. This information pertains to aquaculture. As a result, the income and quality of life of the local populace has been significantly enhanced. This is also a typical illustration of the rural economic development model of this nation. The UN's long recognized China as the world's biggest seafood producer, with China contributing at least 18% of the global seafood capture. Beijing is placing a greater emphasis on the significance of food security in order to achieve greater independence in agricultural production, which is currently characterized by an unstable global food market that's influenced by war, climate change, and geopolitical tensions. Salt alkaline tolerant rice, also referred to as saline rice, is being produced at Xinjiang, one of the 7 pilot areas selected to enhance crop yields. However, the arid environment also challenges the sustainability of agricultural development due to the lack of water. Companies were able to utilize water supplies from high-altitude lakes, snowmelt in mountainous areas, or siphon groundwater up from underneath the mountain in order to make freshwater seafood at fish farms in Xinjiang. The objective of Xinjiang authorities is to elevate the annual seafood production to approximately 30,000 tons by next year. In that same year, China intends to increase its seafood production to 69 million tons. Freshwater fishing in Xinjiang also generates substantial income for people, as reported by the Xinhua news agency. Boston, the largest inland freshwater lake in the country, experiences its busiest fishing season from August to October. It's situated in the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. Since 2018, the Kaidu River has supplied Lake Boston with a total of 807 million cubic meters of water, thereby enhancing the lake's water quality and circulation efficiency. The ecosystem is significantly influenced by the extensive reed beds of Lake Boston, which spans over 40,000 acres. They have the potential to assist the filtration of water and provide habitat and shelter for a variety of aquatic and avian species. 198 species of migratory birds have been observed in the lake, which is now home to an increasing number of them. The lake has been revitalized by the favorable ecological environment, establishing it as the largest fish production base in Xinjiang. It generates over 4 tons of a variety of seafood every year, like freshwater prawns, grass carp, and crabs. The owner of the crab farming facility, Yuan Junwei, stated that the harvest began in August of this year after the release of 36 million crab seeds last year. Xinjiang's total seafood production last year was 173 tons, placing it second among the 5 provinces and autonomous regions in northwest China. The concept of constructing a sea in the desert has been prevalent for an extended period of time. However, the success of this model serves as yet another indication of China's global influence. The concept of establishing a lagoon in the Sahara Desert was first proposed by scientists back in 1957. Don Mackenzie, a Scottish engineer, was the first to propose the concept. He intended to transfer the El Houf Basin into the Sahara Sea by flooding it. Mackenzie suggested the construction of a 644-kilometer-long canal from Morocco to the basin, which would create an inland sea equivalent to the size of Ireland, spanning 96.5 square kilometers. Similarly, in the 1870s, Captain François Roder of the French Army proposed the development of a canal that would connect the Mediterranean Sea with the Chaffahigue of Salt Lake area in the Sahara Desert in southern Tunisia. This would flood 4.8 square kilometers of sandy land, which was inspired by the Suez Canal. Ferdinand Lesseps, a French diplomat who was renowned for overseeing the construction of the Suez, provided his endorsement of the concept. Approximately 25 million francs, or a little over $4 million US, were required to execute the concept at that time. The strategy would facilitate the establishment of additional commercial routes for French vessels. Lesseps and his companions aspired to transform central North Africa into a more fertile and affluent region. Nevertheless, this ambitious plan was never realized due to the fact that the area was not actually below sea level and costs were on the rise. This was discovered during numerous expeditions. Writer Jules Verne was inspired by the plan to mention the construction of the canal in his novel Invasion of the Sea back in 1905, despite its failure. In order to construct a canal that would flood the Qatar Depression 60 meters below sea level, researchers determined that 213 nuclear weapons would need to be detonated. Nevertheless, the detonation of nukes was prohibited by numerous international agreements, and the Plowshare Project got terminated in 1977. A Silicon Valley corporation named Y Combinator introduced the concept of flooding the Algodons Desert in California as a solution to global warming in 2018. this happened more recently in 2018. Their objective was to establish half an acre of water reservoirs for the cultivation of phytoplankton, which would serve as carbon sinks. Nevertheless, this initiative had not been promoted, despite its estimated cost of $50 trillion. Currently, the globe is under threat from desertification. The international community has long acknowledged that desertification is a comprehensive issue that affects the economy, society, and environment of numerous countries worldwide. The UN issued a warning that the process of desertification is one of the biggest environmental challenges of our era. According to the UN announcement, the fashion industry is anticipated to consume 35% more land by 2030, primarily for the production of basic materials for low-cost fashion. The annual loss of squandering of food is equivalent to the production capacity of 1.5 billion acres of productive land. In order to guarantee food security for the global population by 2030, an additional 300 million hectares of land will be required for food production based on current consumption. Nevertheless, the resource land is at risk of significant decline and a reverse development. Land degradation, desertification, and recurring droughts result in the loss of over 12 million acres of land annually. This is the process by which once fertile land is degraded by drought, deforestation, overfarming, or climate change. During this process, the soil's nutrients are so depleted that it's no longer fertile and eventually becomes desiccated. They'll progressively lose their capacity to produce and will not enter the process of desertification if timely intervention is not provided. China's accomplishments in the transformation of deserts into regions with significant economic potential and the subsequent greening of them have resolved a complex global issue. It almost seems like a joke that the richest economy in the world, the US, doesn't have a single high-speed rail. High-speed trains have proved their worth worldwide over the past 50 years. Europe, Japan, and China are leading the game in this domain. But it seems like this revolution bypassed America completely. Despite being one of the world's first countries to get high-speed trains, it failed to spread out. As of 2022, China had by far the longest high-speed railway network in the world, with almost 25,000 miles of high-speed rail lines. It's followed by Spain and Japan with more than 1,800 miles of high-speed rail each. So, why is America lagging in this area? Is it the American love of cars, or is it deep-rooted in economic or political troubles? Well, the answer is both. The first reason? Building a railway isn't cheap. To build a railway line, you have to secure land in a straight path, as you can't run trains at high speeds along a curved path. The U.S. has very strong property rights, which make land acquisitions a legal and financial challenge. Back when it was so cheap to secure land, the U.S. had no problem building train tracks across the country. Compared to China, where the state controls much of the land, securing land's relatively easy. Secondly, the love of cars is deeply ingrained in the average American. Films like Ford vs. Ferrari and Fast and the Furious are a reflection of the public interest. Moreover, the U.S. invests billions in the interstate highway system for regular maintenance and expansion, further cementing the importance of car travel. Then we have some legislation that shaped the course of history. Trains lost their luster after World War II when federal legislation favored private cars and commercial jets. In the 1950s, then-President Eisenhower signed a Federal Aid Highway Act that allocated $25 billion for the expressways. In 1958, airplanes dominated the scene as the Federal Aviation Administration was created to promote fast and safe air travel. Another factor is the ease of acquiring cars in comparison to other nations. Unlike the US, other countries tax heavy amounts on car purchasing to keep demand in check. For example, in Singapore, car buyers must pay an additional 150% on top of the price of the car in excise and registration duties. This discourages people from buying cars and resorting to cheaper modes of travel like high-speed railways. In a society where there are fewer cars, the demand for public transport will organically be higher. In America, 91% of households own at least one car, with Idaho and Wyoming having the highest rate at 96%. But it seems like the car fever is slowly and gradually dying down. But perhaps the most powerful factor is the expansion of cities. During the pre-automobile era, residential and commercial structures were close to each other, so people could reach places by walking. But with a growing need to accommodate the increasing population, suburbs are built at greater and greater distances from the train station. So even if you do arrive in a city by train, you still got to use a car to get around. Furthermore, most cities don't have a convenient metro system to carry people to their destinations. That's why most people opt for traveling by car all the way through. The already few existing railways are underutilized, and that's because of the way that the tracks are laid out. If you look at the network of Chinese railways, you'll see a giant web. The railway net is spread on all corners so that there's no area inaccessible by rail. However, if you look at the American train network, there are a lot of linear lines. Much of the American land isn't covered by the train network. The limited destination options provided by the American Railway discourage people from using it frequently. That's another reason why the government's reluctant to invest in railways, especially when the demand's so low. However, this wasn't always the case in the past. In the late 1960s, two shiny projects were unveiled by the government, the Turbo Train and the Metroliner. Named after the Latin word for tornado, the Turbo Train was engineered by the United Aircraft Company, UAC, and used the same turbine technology that lifted planes and helicopters. It traveled at a speed of 170 miles per hour, 270 kilometers per hour, setting a record in North America that remains to this very day. But it did not deliver impressively when it came to regular services. Unable to reach its full speed, the train averaged around 63 miles an hour, 100 kilometers per hour. The second high-speed project was the electric Metroliner, made up of a stainless steel tube. The Metroliner reached 164 miles per hour, 260 kilometers per hour on a trial run and promised a 2.5-hour trip between New York and Washington, D.C. Sadly, the Metroliner proved to be a lemon. Its various technical issues, like the rattling of air compressor coils, wobbly carriages, etc., doomed the project. Finally, in 2000, a silvery blue electric train named Acela entered the picture. Even though the public was excited to use this new train, Acela didn't live up to the expectations. But much of it wasn't its fault. Much like its predecessors, it had the same problem. There were no dedicated tracks for Acela, and it had to share the tracks with the other freight trains. Throughout history, American governments have tried to reduce the cost of high-speed rails by not constructing exclusive tracks for passenger trains. Acela had to be able to sustain high-force collisions that could not happen on systems dedicated exclusively to passenger trains elsewhere in the world. Critics also claimed that Acela would skip stops to make up for its delay. But not to worry, because there's finally a ray of hope for the American public. A new inner-city railway called the Brightline was unveiled recently. It's the only privately owned and operated inner-city passenger railroad in the United States. Before we go further, what are the criteria for a high-speed train? The most common international definitions specify speeds above 155 miles an hour, 250 kilometers per hour on newly built lines, and speeds above 124 miles per hour, 200 kilometers an hour on upgraded lines as high speed. Brightline has a top speed of 125 miles per hour, 200 kilometers per hour, while the project is marketing itself as a high-speed railway. It's closer to the definition of a higher-speed rail. It'll connect Miami and Orlando with possible extensions up to Tampa. There's a lot of traffic between these two locations, with an expected 35 million annual travelers. Currently, those who wish to travel from Miami to Orlando have two options: hop on a plane or take the I-95 highway. The I-95 highway is one of the deadliest highways in the world. It routinely claims the lives of hundreds of motorists each year, with a death rate of 15 fatalities per 100 miles. As of 2019, the I-95 had a nation-leading 284 deaths, not to mention that it is jam-packed with cars, leading to several bottlenecks in the path. So what better way to cash in on an opportunity like this? Brightline's main Orlando station is part of Orlando International Airport's Terminal C. It offers the most direct connection from an inner-city rail line to an airport terminal in the United States. This was made possible because Orlando Airport included the railroad station and track access in its master plan, in concert with a state high-speed rail plan. Brightline was able to take advantage of a state policy setting aside right-of-way alongside some highways for high-speed rail. This means that some of its tracks will be shared by freight trains, while some sections will be exclusive for Brightline. The distance between Miami and Orlando by car takes 3 to 5 hours to cover. However, Brightline is offering this distance to be covered in under 3 hours. The train is equipped with comfortable seats, Wi-Fi, charging ports, and refreshments for a comfortable experience. Ever since Brightline was started, more than 10,000 jobs have been created, and the train itself has a positive $6 billion impact on Florida. But it seems like Brightline isn't stopping anytime soon. A new project called Brightline West will connect Las Vegas and Southern California. It'll have additional stations in Apple Valley, Hesperia, and Rancho Cucamonga. Trains will take passengers from Las Vegas to Rancho Cucamonga in just 2 hours and 10 minutes, twice as fast as the normal drive time. Rancho Cucamonga Station will connect to Southern California's regional Metrolink service, allowing for seamless connectivity to downtown Los Angeles and beyond. With the initiation of the first private intercity rail, it's hoped that many others would follow this example. It's rare to see a private company in the railway world, but as you can see with failed governmental projects like the California High-Speed Railway, this is a green signal for America. For those who are unaware, the California High-Speed Railway was promised to the public 15 years ago and is still pretty much limited to just paper. Multiple disasters like delays in buying land and building the line, inaccurate cost estimates, and a lack of funding have drowned the project. Hence, Brightline seems to be a good model for other future railway projects. New York State is, without a doubt, one of the cornerstones of American civilization, so it's hard to believe that this region's served by a decaying railway system. The Northeast Corridor is the longest electrified rail corridor, spanning up to 8 states from Washington, D.C. to New York to Boston. This 457-mile-long corridor is utilized by both passenger and freight, as well as intercity travelers, serving 17% of the U.S. population. Dubbed the busiest railway line in the country, it supports more than 2,000 trains with 800,000 daily passengers. The portion of the Northeast Corridor between Newark, New Jersey and Penn Station is 10 miles long and carries over 200,000 daily on Amtrak and NJ Transit passenger trips. It has only 2 tracks which support approximately 450 trains, while a majority of the remainder of the Northeast Corridor has 4. The 2 tracks mean that there's a traffic bottleneck in one of the most vital arteries of the region. Picture this: if even one of those tubes under the Hudson River becomes unoperational, it'll cause a $16 billion loss to the nation's GDP and add 30 minutes of travel time in an already congested railway station. At this point, it's very much in America's interest to make travel fast and headache-free in such an essential economic region. The Gateway program will replace and update rail infrastructure assets that, in many cases, are over 100 years old. The 2-track rail line used by Amtrak and NJ Transit Rail Operations, NJT, has reached its full capacity of 24 trains per hour. To increase the railway capacity of this section of the corridor, there are several expansions planned. This includes 1. A new tunnel under the Hudson River, 2. Stabilizing the existing 100-year-old tunnel under the Hudson, 3. New tracks and platforms to be placed on Penn Station in New York, 4. Replacing the Portal Bridge and Sawtooth Bridges in New Jersey. These modifications and several others come at a staggering cost of $16.1 billion. But this price tag seems to be worth it, as this project will reduce travel time, inject $85 million a month into the economy, and create 72,000 jobs. The construction will also utilize U.S. suppliers and manufacturers. More than just stimulating the economy, the Gateway program will eliminate 2 million tons of CO2 from the air. In the beginning, New York and New Jersey were going to divide the project expense, but luckily they'll be saving a few bucks as the government stepped in. As of now, the majority of the expenses will be covered by the federal government. Under the Infrastructure Act, the project received an additional $3.8 billion.
Today's 3.8 infusion follows other funds I announced previously and brings the federal total to over $11 billion.
Consequently, both New York and New Jersey only have to contribute 15% to the Gateway program. The project was proposed in 2011, but it took nearly a decade to convince politicians and federal agencies to fund this cause. In 2021, it was formally approved by the federal government. Work officially began in 2023, although the completion is set for 10 to 12 years later. The first phase of construction includes creating a 2-track tunnel under the Hudson River and replacing the obsolete Portal North Bridge with an elevated one. Let's start with the existing tunnel under the Hudson River called the North River Tunnel. The North River Tunnel is in a desperate need of renovation, not just because it was built in 1910, but also because it was heavily damaged in 2012 by Superstorm Sandy. The intense flooding filled the tunnel with millions of gallons of salt water, which led to disabled trains, signal malfunctions, and delays. The magnitude of this damage created an urgency for its speedy refurbishment. In May 2014, Amtrak stated that within 20 years, one or both of the tunnels would have to be shut down, as they are more or less operating at full capacity. The Pennsylvania Railroad started construction in 1903, and it was open to the people in November 1910. The tunnel was considered state-of-the-art by the standards of the 20th century, but not so much now. It's a simple one-track in, one-track out system connecting New York and New Jersey. The tunnel was created using cast iron tubes, and they lie 20 feet below the riverbed and sill. The neglected walls are unable to stop the saltwater from intruding into the tunnel. The continuous leaking of saltwater has damaged the concrete, which is now falling apart. Inside the tunnel, 2 bench walls run on both sides. These bench walls are also corroding. It's important to note that the bench wall has ducts that store the power cables that serve the trains and Penn Station. The final nail in the coffin was Superstorm Sandy. It left behind a large residue of salt on the cement walls, decomposing them over time and eroding the copper cables. As such, there's very limited flexibility when incidents occur in the tunnel. The new 2-track tunnel will be constructed between Bergen Palisades in New Jersey to Manhattan. So now instead of 1 tunnel, you got 2 tunnels under the Hudson River. Just like the North River Tunnel, the Portal North Bridge is also more than a century old and in dire need of replacement. It's a movable swing span bridge that crosses over the Hackensack River, taking trains into and out of New York. Being a critical link of the Northeast Corridor, it carries 450 Amtrak and NJ Transit trains each day. Due to age and fragility, trains are restricted to a maximum of 60 miles an hour over the bridge. As it is movable, it can open and close to allow maritime traffic to pass through. However, its electrical and mechanical components malfunction often, delaying the opening and closing of the trains. That's why engineers thought it would be best replaced by a modern, more reliable fixed-span bridge. The new bridge would be much higher over the water, allowing boats to pass underneath without the need to open and close. It'll have higher speeds along with increased capacity and save millions of dollars in maintenance costs. In the same fashion, a second bridge called the Portal South Bridge will stand alongside the North Bridge. The South Bridge will also feature a 4-track like the rest of the Northeast Corridor. Phase 1 also includes the construction of a concrete casing on the west side of Manhattan and Hudson Yards to preserve the right-of-way for the future tunnel to Penn Station in Manhattan. Interestingly, before the Gateway project was even a thing, a similar project called Access to the Region's Core was being pitched. Although the idea was scrapped, this plan similarly aimed to create a new tunnel, a new rail yard, and a subway. A new station adjacent to the New York Penn Station was to be constructed, as running more trains into the current station was deemed unfeasible. An estimated budget for the project was $8.7 billion. Construction began in mid-2009 and the project was slated for completion in 2018. But in a shocking turn of events, it was canceled by Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, who cited the possibility of cost overruns and the state's lack of funds. But what's sadder is that $600 million had already been spent on that project. This decision remains controversial till today. The future phases of the Gateway program will replace and expand the Sawtooth bridges on the Penn Station in Manhattan. In late 2023, Amtrak, in coordination with New Jersey Transit, began the procurement process for the Sawtooth Bridge's replacement. This replacement program will preserve and expand its capacity. The new bridge will feature a 4-track structure which will double the capacity in one of the most congested and complex locations on the corridor, where these different services all come together. The Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, recently awarded this project up to $133.32 million in grant funding to support early construction activities. The Sawtooth bridges are owned by Amtrak and are used by 400-plus trains a day belonging to the New Jersey Transit, PATH, and Conrail freight train. In addition, Penn Station is also due for a multi-million-dollar overhaul. It's one of the busiest transit stations in the world, seeing an average of 650,000 visitors passing through its halls on a daily basis. Its 21 tracks accommodate approximately 1,300 train movements each weekday. The reconstructions needed to correct the substandard conditions experienced by hundreds of thousands of customers at Penn Station. The project will add at least 9 new tracks to the station, increase the number of entrances, and provide more accessibility options. Moreover, new platforms, railroad systems, passenger concourses, underground connections, and support services will be added to the station. Overall, this expansion will allow more than a doubling of peak-hour passenger trains once future capacity improvements are constructed. Another target of the Gateway program is the Dock Bridge. It crosses the Passaic River in Newark, New Jersey. Made operational in 1935, this 90-year-old structure is in for repair. Since it's a movable bridge, the plan is to convert it to a fixed bridge to reduce delays. The project would also repair the bridge's steel and concrete, and remediate and repaint its structure. Officials at the Gateway Development Commission have publicly stated that by 2038, they'll have finished digging and constructing the new tunnels and then rehabilitating the 2 existing Trans-Hudson tubes. However, the audit performed by the U.S. Department of Transportation's Transit Administration shows that this work will likely take until 2040. The complicated geography of the Hudson River poses a challenge to human ambitions and requires substantial prep work. Despite the setbacks, the Gateway program was a much-needed step towards streamlining travel in a region that contributes almost 20% to the GDP and hosts 97 of the 500 Fortune companies. It's a critical element of the nation's transportation network, linking millions of people to good jobs and connecting this region with the rest of the country. What do you think of the Gateway program? Will it solve New York's traffic problems? Imagine New York City with an extra 1,760 acres at its southern tip. This is the bold vision of Rutgers professor Jason Barr, who aims to combat rising sea levels while providing 180,000 new homes for 247,000 people. The new land, called New Manhattan, harks back to the island's original indigenous name. This isn't the first expansion in Lower Manhattan's history. Approximately 29% of Manhattan, about 3,000 acres, exists due to land reclamation. The borders of New York City have changed many times, particularly in Lower Manhattan along the Hudson and East River shorelines. Lower Manhattan has expanded for various reasons, including incremental land encroachments by private entities, major municipal projects like the creation of Battery Park, efforts to encounter the exodus to Upper New York which harmed downtown businesses, economic incentives due to the high value of NYC real estate, and the need to enhance resilience against land erosion and climate change impacts. City leaders and engineers stress that a climate resiliency plan is crucial. Without action, much of Lower Manhattan could become unusable. A risk assessment found that 70% of Lower Manhattan's shoreline needs infrastructure improvements, including flood defenses extending into the East River. Areas between the Brooklyn Bridge and the Battery are particularly vulnerable. Could expanding Lower Manhattan also address the city's housing shortage? Absolutely. New York City faces a severe shortage of affordable housing, reshaping local demographics and culture in real time. Gentrification, while also criticized, also brings benefits like a more stable economy, reduced crime rates, and increased local revenues, which can fund public services and infrastructure improvements. New York City continues to attract immigrants, with over 45,000 migrants arriving in the past year alone. This influx strains the city's shelter system and sparks policy conflict between New York and Washington. Expanding Lower Manhattan could provide much-needed housing and space for services and infrastructure to support economically disadvantaged residents. And the best part is, we already know this works. Consider this timeline that depicts the expansion and growth of Lower Manhattan in both size and worldwide dominance. In 1699, the old Dutch Wall was removed to make way for Wall Street. By 1825, Lower Manhattan had fewer than 170,000 people and lacked a regular police force or trained fire department. From 1869 to 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge, the first to use steel for cables, linked Manhattan and Brooklyn. In 1863, the British built dirt platforms at the southern tip of the island for military defense. They did it again in 1735, calling it the Copsey Battery. The remains of Fort George, also known as Amsterdam, were used to expand the battery in 1788. Castle Clinton was built on a small artificial island just off the shore. Construction began in 1808 and the fort was finished in 1811. Though they kept making changes through the 1820s. Starting in 1855, the battery was mostly created by landfill using dirt from street widening projects in Lower Manhattan. This connected Castle Gardens Island to the mainland of Manhattan. The original shoreline is now roughly the modern park's eastern boundary at State Street. In the 1960s and 70s, landfill was used to create the 92 acres that make up Battery Park City. The first 24 acres were built on 1.2 million cubic yards of material from the construction of the original World Trade Center. More fill came from other projects like the New York City Water Tunnel and the dredging of Kill Van Kull. The East River waterfront has shifted over the years, moving to Water Street in 1730, then to Front Street in 1780, and finally to South Street by 1800. In 2013, then-Mayor Michael Bloomberg proposed a project called Seaport City, envisioned as a development similar to Battery Park City. This project aimed to revitalize the area around the South Street seaport. 6 years later, in 2019, Bloomberg's successor, Bill de Blasio, introduced a plan to address the increasing threats of climate change. This plan included creating up to 500 feet of new land extending from South Street to the East River, south of the Brooklyn Bridge. The objective was to protect South Street Seaport and the financial district from potential damage caused by rising sea levels and severe weather events. In 2021, the City of New York unveiled the Financial District Seaport, Fit a Seaport Resilience Plan. This ambitious initiative targets a 0.9-mile stretch of shoreline in Lower Manhattan, known for its complexity and vulnerability. This plan includes constructing floodwalls, floodgates, pumps, and other advanced water management systems to handle tidal flows, flooding, and stormwater. The construction will extend between 90 and 200 feet into the East River, providing a robust protection against future climate-related threats. Gansevoort Peninsula, now part of the meatpacking district at the northern end of Greenwich Village, was originally a spit of land extending into the Hudson River. The North Battery, an artillery installation, was built there between 1808 and 1811 and was connected to Hubert Street by a bridge and jetty. In 1812, Fort Gansevoort was completed between Gansevoort Street and West 12th Street. In 1837, landfill was used to create 13th Avenue. West Washington Market was established in 1887. New York City faced a unique challenge and addressed it by removing a block of land created by the 1837 landfill, which had extended Manhattan to 13th Avenue. This controversial move involved condemning many businesses, but the city could not condemn the West Washington Street Market, which remained as a landfill. The market eventually closed, and the dock was converted into a sanitation facility for loading garbage barges headed towards the Fresh Kills landfill. The only part of 13th Avenue that survived was behind this facility. In 2016, the city started demolishing the Department of Sanitation building to make way for a new public park. Little Island at Pier 55 is just to the north of this area. In 1911, Canadian-American engineer Kennard Thompson proposed an expansive plan called a Really Greater New York. His vision included expanding Lower Manhattan into Governor's Island, which was undergoing land reclamation to create New Manhattan. He also proposed creating new islands in Lower New York Bay and altering rivers. One of his goals was to stop the northward expansion, which he believed harmed downtown businesses. Over the years, Thompson refined his idea and formed the Manhattan Extension Corporation in 1921, supported by prominent figures like former judge and presidential candidate Alton B. Parker and artist Walter Russell. Thompson continued to advocate for his vision throughout his life. A century later, Vishant Chakrabarty, a professor at Columbia's University Center for Urban Real Estate, proposed a similar idea. He suggested using landfill to connect Lower Manhattan and Governor's Island, creating a new neighborhood called LoLo, Lower Manhattan. While this proposal highlighted benefits, it also faced challenges such as high costs, strict regulations on building with landfill, and potential environmental impacts. In 2015, author John Methvin revisited the proposal in The Awl, humorously dubbing the new borough Frankenborough. In 2022, Rutgers University urban economist Jason Barr proposed the new Manhattan Project, continuing the vision of expanding Manhattan. However, this idea faced criticism, particularly from Willie Blackmore and Curbed, who raised environmental concerns about the proposal. New York City's survival and growth hinge on how well its 520-mile coastline is protected. In the past, rapid port development dramatically changed the coastline's topography, with dredging to make way for bulkheads and piers to facilitate shipping. Much of the city's coastline lacks purpose-built defenses against high tides or storm surges. Instead, there are sandy beaches used for recreation that have been supplemented with sand to replace erosion losses. Until recently, the city's natural coastal areas and wetlands have been underutilized, failing to provide crucial protection where inland buffers and other structures could have played a significant role in strengthening the coastline. Hurricane Sandy struck the Battery in Lower Manhattan, generating a massive surge that created a storm tide over 14 feet above mean lower low water. The surge overwhelmed beaches, boardwalks, and bulkheads, eventually flooding the streets of Lower Manhattan. Projections indicate that such scenarios will become more frequent and intense as climate change produces more erratic and unpredictable weather. The Manhattan Island Extension Project aims to provide near and long-term solutions to enhance the area's climate resilience. The goal is to fortify the coastline, reducing the hazards posed by climate change and land exposure in Lower Manhattan by the 2050s and 2100. Tools being discussed for this project are deployable protection, flip-up barriers, parallel stormwater system, raised edge, sea level rise protection, elevated esplanade, raised edge, surge protection in some areas, seepage barrier. The project's goal is to prevent floodwaters from coming directly inland from the ocean, reduce water surges over beaches and bulkheads, and prevent flooding of neighborhoods and critical infrastructure such as tunnels. This initiative, aside from saving New York City, aims to provide robust protection against future climate-related threats. If the plan to significantly increase land in Lower Manhattan moves forward, the next crucial question is how best to utilize this new space. It'll likely require voter and legislative support to ensure some of this land is allocated for low to medium income housing and multi-use spaces for the homeless and migrant population. Expensive housing prices in large metropolitan areas are not just a New York City issue. Cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, and D.C. also face affordable housing shortages due to changing urban economics. From millennials to Zoomers, many professionals prefer urban lifestyles over suburban living, at least until they start families. Refurbished brownstones, new condos, townhomes, and luxury apartments are prevalent in the lower Manhattan real estate market, providing a significant economic boost through dining, retail, sports, and entertainment industries. However, it's clear that more affordable living spaces are needed, even if not directly in downtown areas, at least within city limits. This would allow people to stay close to employment and city amenities. If the plans for 1,760 acres of reclaimed land materialize, providing 180,000 new homes for 247,000 people, it'd be a missed opportunity if affordable housing isn't included. It's exciting to think that the solution to harden NYC's coastal land could also address the city's overcrowded and expensive housing market. The looming threat of climate change is upon us, but so is the challenge of housing a growing population critical to NYC's survival. Everything that makes New York City special is based on the wide diversity of its population, and it's essential that all residents continue to enjoy the Big Apple. The George Lucas Museum's journey to find a home was anything but straightforward. The creator of Star Wars wanted a place where storytelling through art could come alive. You see, over the years, he's collected more than 10,000 pieces of what he calls fantastical art, and he wanted to house them in a museum that would showcase the art of narrative and inspire future generations. But figuring out where to build that museum was not easy. First, he looked in Chicago. The idea was to set up the museum on a prime spot near Soldier Field, right by the lake. It seemed like a great fit. Lucas was excited and the mayor was supportive, but soon there was a big problem. Some locals and preservationists argued that the museum would do more for Lucas's legacy than for the public. They worried it would disrupt the area, and lawsuits followed. Despite the initial enthusiasm, the project lost momentum, and eventually it was clear that Chicago was not going to work out. Lucas then turned to his hometown of San Francisco. He hoped to build a museum at Crissy Field with beautiful views of the Golden Gate Bridge. It felt like the perfect setting, almost bringing the museum back to its roots. But once again, things didn't go smoothly. The Presidio Trust, which managed the land, couldn't reach an agreement with Lucas on the specifics, and some community members had concerns about how the museum would impact the area's iconic views. After years of negotiation, San Fran also passed on the opportunity. Finally, this is where Los Angeles comes into the picture. The city offered Lucas a spot in Exposition Park right next to USC, where he had studied film. LA embraced the project without hesitation, seeing it as a great fit for the city known for its love of stories and creativity, and the museum found its home. Now, in Exposition Park, you can see the museum taking shape. It's a massive $1 billion project that's set to change the way people experience art and storytelling. Designed by mad architects and led by George Lucas, this building looks like it belongs in a sci-fi movie. It's sculptural, curvy, and unlike anything around it, rising from the ground as if it's defying gravity. But it's not just about the building. The whole area around it's getting a major facelift too. Before the museum, it was just a bunch of parking lots, but now the area is being transformed into a green, walkable space with over 200 new trees planted, focusing on native and drought-tolerant species. Landscape architect Mia Lehrer has made sure this new park-like setting feels like a refreshing oasis, especially in a city all about cars. The museum itself seems to float above the ground, with its unique design barely touching down at just a few points. A massive archway stretches 185 feet across the public plaza, creating a new entrance to Exposition Park that leads to both the north and south lobbies of the museum. A striking feature is the elliptical oculus that hovers 4 stories up, offering a view from the plaza straight up to the sky. This oculus isn't just for show. It's set to be a key meeting spot for visitors, connecting all the gallery spaces inside the museum. And then there's the way it's built. Given LA's reputation for earthquakes, the museum's design includes an innovative system that allows it to move slightly during tremors. Sandra Jackson Dumont, the museum's director and CEO, describes it as being built like a giant roller skate, with space on each side to shift gently in an earthquake. The building's exterior is covered in over 1,500 unique panels of fiberglass reinforced polymer, and this curvy design continues inside. The 4th floor gallery is a perfect example, where the walls mirror the building's outside curves, creating a fluid and cohesive experience. Even in the event space, the exposed rib-like ceiling keeps up the theme of defying right angles, making the whole structure feel like it's floating above a park. A nod to Yan Song's vision of the museum as a cloud or a tree canopy. Mia Lehrer, the landscape architect behind the Lucas Museum, described her design approach as a hero's journey. Meanwhile, architect Ma Yang-song likened the building to a cloud, and from above it might look like some kind of futuristic bowling pin nestled in 11 acres of greenery. For visitors on the ground, though, it's set to be an awe-inspiring piece of architecture that feels larger than life. As Sandra Jackson Dumont, the museum's director and CEO, put it, "This is not a project. This is not an initiative. This is a 200-year-plus proposition." The Lucas Museum is unique in its focus on storytelling through images, showcasing everything from paintings and sculptures to murals, photography, comic art, and illustrations. Lucas's personal collection, which includes works by Norman Rockwell, Alberto Vargas, and R. Crumb, is valued at over $600 million. Jackson Dumont, who spent 16 years at the Seattle Arts Museum and taught at NYU, describes it as a visual museum, noting that while LA has a great film museum, the Academy Museum, this space is going to explore the broader impact of visual storytelling. She's enthusiastic about her new role and the opportunity to connect with the South LA community through concerts, events, and training programs for architects, art historians, and horticulturalists. Walking through the empty galleries, it's easy to see the potential. Even now, with construction materials, studs, and the electrical conduits scattered throughout, the space hints at the grandeur to come. The entryway's soaring ceilings bring to mind the swooping concrete shells of architect Felix Candela. And the other spaces throughout the museum continue this dramatic, fluid style. Beyond the main lobbies, the lower floors offer a range of public spaces that cater to different interests. There are 2 state-of-the-art theaters, each seating 299 people, perfect for screenings and events. A horseshoe-shaped library and learning area with large windows provide a peaceful spot to look out over the park. And there are 10 studios and classrooms where visitors can dive into hands-on creative activities. You'll also find a museum shop, a cafe, and a spacious 10,000-square-foot gallery that rounds out the offerings on the lower floors. To get around, there are 5 public elevators on the north side of the building. 3 of them are cylindrical and made entirely of glass, giving visitors panoramic views as they move from the north lobby up to the 4th floor galleries, which span 82,000 feet. On the 5th floor, nearly 8,000 feet of gallery space sits under a unique ribbed ceiling. This level also features a restaurant with both indoor and outdoor seating, a large event space, and an outdoor terrace complete with a green roof. The museum's collection is just as diverse as its spaces, with works from a wide range of artists like Judy Baca, N.C. Wyeth, Diego Rivera, Norman Rockwell, Kadir Nelson, and many more. Notably, the museum recently acquired the archive related to Judy Baca's iconic mural of the Great Wall of Los Angeles and Robert Colescott's painting George Washington Carver crossing the Delaware River. Sandra Jackson Dumont, the museum's director and CEO, sees these pieces as bridging pop culture and history, expanding the narrative of what belongs in a museum. In 2019, the museum also acquired the Separate Cinema Archive, an extensive collection that documents the history of African American cinema from 1904 to now. This archive includes about 37,000 items like posters, stills, scripts, and other artifacts, showcasing the work of stars like Dorothy Dandridge, Paul Robeson, Duke Ellington, Sidney Poitier, and Josephine Baker. Jackson Dumont highlighted that this collection not only offers rich opportunities for film buffs, but also sparks important conversations about African American stories in film. The Lucas Museum isn't just about housing art, it's about creating a space where art, history, and culture intersect in meaningful ways. With its wide-ranging collection and inviting public spaces, it aims to be a place that not only preserves and displays art, but also encourages learning, discussion, and community connection. Los Angeles International Airport, better known as LAX, has long been a symbol of the city's bustling pace and constant activity. For anyone who's ever passed through, it's no secret that the airport has struggled with its fair share of issues. Overcrowded terminals, endless traffic jams, and frustrated travelers. With the 2026 World Cup and 28 Olympics on the horizon, the stakes are higher than ever. LAX is in the middle of a $14 billion renovation, aiming to transform itself into a world-class hub before these major events bring millions more visitors. But can LAX pull it off in time? LAX wasn't always this sprawling giant. It actually started as a small airfield called Mines Field back in the 1920s. Over the decades, as air travel grew, so did LAX. It officially became Los Angeles International Airport in 1949, and by the 1980s, the airport had expanded with new terminals and infrastructure to handle increasing passenger traffic. A significant upgrade was made for the '84 Olympics, but even that couldn't keep up with the demand we see now. Now, LAX is the second busiest airport in the States, serving around 75 million passengers every year. This constant stream of travelers has led to long wait times, packed terminals, and a whole lot of stress. The current modernization project is a massive effort to tackle these issues head-on. But with so much work to be done and the clock ticking down to 2026 and 28, it's now a race against time. LAX's layout with its scattered terminals makes the whole airport experience more challenging. Many parts of the airport just feel outdated and cramped. Narrow hallways, limited seating. It's not just the inside that's tough either. Getting to and from LAX is a real headache. Traffic is always a nightmare, especially with so many people relying on cars and taxis. It's like everyone's trying to squeeze through the same bottleneck. On top of that, passengers often struggle to find help from airport staff during busy times, making it even harder to navigate or solve problems. These issues have led to a negative perception of LAX, and with major events like the World Cup and the Olympics on the horizon, the pressure is on to fix things before they get worse. And this is not just a minor facelift, it's a complete overhaul. Everything from terminals to roadways is being rebuilt and reimagined to turn LAX into a world-class airport ready to handle the massive crowds we expect in the future. The expansion of LAX was a carefully planned process. Several alternatives were considered, focusing on expanding the airport westward. These plans included new runways, a terminal, a concourse for the Tom Bradley International Terminal, and automated people mover systems to better connect the terminals. However, the chosen plan, Alternative D, faced significant pushback from local residents and eventually got halted in 2007. This plan was aimed to restrict vehicle access by moving passenger pickup and drop-off to a new ground transportation center near the airport entrance connected to the terminals by an all-people mover, or APM. Despite its potential to improve airport security and streamline passenger flow, the project got put on hold due to strong opposition. Even with these setbacks, the modernization efforts pushed forward. Since 2017, LAX has been undergoing a $14 billion transformation aimed at prepping for the 2028 Olympics. Terminal 1, for example, got a $980 million renovation completed in 2021. This upgrade added a new 283,000 square foot section, making it easier to check in, get your bags, and get through security with new automated lanes. A bridge now connects terminals 1 and 2 so passengers don't have to go through security again when transferring between terminals. The Tom Bradley International Terminal, already a key hub for international flights, is also getting an upgrade worth nearly $2 billion. New automated lanes have been added to help speed up security checks. Nearby, the new Midfield Satellite Concourse MSC is being built in phases. MSC North, completed in 2021, added 15 new gates, including 12 capable of handling large aircraft like the Airbus A380. This area also features sleek new lounges and shops. The other part of the concourse, MSC South, is still under construction and is expected to add 8 more gates specifically for narrow-body aircraft by next year. Terminals 4 and 5 are also in line for an overhaul with a combined budget of about $1.6 billion. The goal of these projects is to create a more efficient, modern, and welcoming airport experience, ready to show the world what LA has to offer when the World Cup and Olympics come to town. One of the big changes on the horizon is the construction of a new departure hall set to be completed by 2027. This new space will streamline the check-in process by consolidating it all into one central area, eliminating the need for separate check-ins at each terminal. Passengers can look forward to a smoother experience as they navigate the airport. In addition to the departure hall, the South Concourse is being built to offer more space for passengers to relax, dine, and shop. This area will also feature a dedicated bus gate, making it easier to connect between domestic and international flights. Meanwhile, the existing North Concourse is undergoing a major renovation with upgrades including new escalators, elevators, and ticket counters. Public areas like baggage claim and the hallways between the gates are also getting a facelift to improve the overall experience. These upgrades are part of a broader effort to modernize LAX by 2027. Some key improvements have already been completed, like the T4 connector, a $115 million bridge that got finished in 2020. The connector allows passengers to walk between Terminal 4 and the Tom Bradley International Terminal without having to go through security again. Terminal 5 is next in line for a makeover, with $250 million being invested to enhance the check-in and security processes. A state-of-the-art baggage screening system is being installed, which promises better security and less waiting time for your bags. Once through security, travelers will find a revamped baggage claim area, new elevators and escalators, and more lounge spaces and restaurants to make the pre-flight experience as enjoyable as possible. Terminal 6 has already seen a couple of upgrades over the years, including a larger lobby, new check-in kiosks, and additional restaurants and shops. Now they're investing another $38.5 million to further modernize the gate and lounge areas, with the project set to wrap up in 2024. The goal is to provide a more comfortable and modern experience for everyone passing through. Beyond the terminals, LAX is also focusing on its runways and taxiways, which are getting essential upgrades to ensure that they can handle the increasing demands of air travel safely and efficiently. These upgrades are like giving the airport's backbone a good stretch, preparing it for the future. But perhaps the most exciting development is the plan for a new Terminal 9 in Concourse Zero, which will be part of a second phase in the modernization plan. Getting to and from LAX has always been a hassle, but that's about to change with the Land Access Modernization Program. One of the key components of this plan is the Automated People Mover, APM, a $2 billion elevated electric train system. This new addition will connect all the terminals, parking lots, a new car rental center, and even link up with LA's subway system. Imagine gliding over the traffic in comfort, enjoying the views as you effortlessly move between your destinations. The APM is expected to carry up to 30 million passengers a year and take a significant number of cars off the road, making a huge difference in reducing traffic congestion. It's slated to be operational by early 2026, just in time for the upcoming major events. Another big change is the Consolidated Rent-A-Car Conrack facility, a $1.3 billion project that'll bring all the car rental companies under one roof. No more waiting for shuttle buses to distant lots. This facility will be directly connected to the APM, so you can hop off the train and pick up your car in no time. Conrack's expected to open next year, making car rentals at LAX a lot more convenient. But the improvements don't stop there. The project also includes construction of the intermodal transportation facilities, which will serve as giant hubs for buses and other transportation options. Whether you're coming back from downtown LA or need a ride to your hotel, these facilities will make connecting to and from the airport that much easier. In addition, there are upgrades happening to the roads around the airport, with improvements to sidewalk areas and road infrastructures designed to enhance traffic flow and passenger pickup zones. The $118 million investment is expected to cut traffic at the central terminal area by a whopping 40%, which means less time stuck in traffic and more time enjoying your trip. All these changes are part of LAX's broader plans to become a world-class airport that's easy to get to and even easier to get around. The ambitious modernization effort, which began in 2017, is a long-term project expected to continue through 2030. However, most of the key projects like the APM, Conrack, and various terminal renovations are on track to get completed before the 2028 Olympics. Once the $14 billion has been spent and the dust settles, LAX won't just be modernized, it's going to feel like a brand new airport. The terminals will be sleek, the rides on the new train will be smooth, and the overall experience will finally be worthy of a world-class city like Los Angeles. Just like the '84 Olympics left a lasting mark on the city, this modernization will be a legacy of the 2028 Games, transforming the way people travel through LAX. So, next time you fly in or out of Los Angeles, get ready for a whole new experience at LAX. Have you ever dealt with traffic or crowds at LAX? If so, things are about to get a whole lot better.
Strict water restrictions come into effect for millions of Californians shortly as the west coast of America continues to experience a crippling drought.
As California's population grows and the weather patterns shift, there's a real push to update the state's water supply system. The last big project was the New Malone's Reservoir, finished in 1979 when California had just over 23 million people. Fast forward to 2024 and we're at over 40 million. That's a 70% jump. Sure, we're way better at using water wisely now, both in cities and farms, but we can't just save our way out of this water shortage. So what's the solution? Let's dive in and figure out. Let's get one thing clear. The Central Valley is a powerhouse. Right in the heart of California, this is the most productive farming area in the U.S. Just about every inch is used for big-time agriculture. Think almonds, walnuts, pistachios, olives, cherries, and way more. If you're eating it, there's a good chance it grew here. You can see the hustle everywhere. Trucks loaded with fertilizer or diesel rumble down the straight roads, passing field after field of crops. Canals cut through the landscape, carrying crucial water from one farm to another. Cows crowd under metal shades, and their smell hangs over nearby towns. But there's a spot that breaks the mold. Right where two rivers meet, there's a patch of wild land. What once were walnut orchards are now wetlands buzzing with life. Trees tangle over remnants of levees, and animals not seen for decades are making a comeback. This is a glimpse of the Central Valley's past, a reminder of the wilderness that thrived here before it became an agricultural giant. This restored area shows us what the valley might have looked like before it was transformed by farming. Austin Stevenot, who looked after this place, points out that this lush wildscape is closer to the original state of the land, cherished by the Miwok tribe for thousands of years. Now, with the return of native plants, the land is starting to remember its roots. You wouldn't guess it from looking, but this wild floodplain used to be as industrious as the farmland around it. Right at the meeting point of the San Joaquin and Tuolumne rivers, it once held a dairy farm and crop fields owned by a well-known local farmer. About 10 years ago, a conservation group bought the 2,100-acre site, ditched the agriculture, and brought back the original vegetation that thrived here long ago. They poured $40 million into this project, not just to bring nature back, but to test a solution for the severe water management issues that have troubled California and the West for years. The Central Valley, like many parts of the West, faces a water dilemma. It's either too dry or too wet. In dry years, when mountain reservoirs are low, farmers pump groundwater so intensely that the earth itself begins to sink. In wet years, overflowing reservoirs send water surging down rivers, breaking through old levees, flooding farms, and swamping towns. The restored floodplain is a game changer. In wet years, it acts like a sponge, soaking up excess river water and slowing its flow towards major cities like Stockton. The water escapes into the earth, replenishing groundwater reserves that have been heavily drawn for decades. But that's not all. This revived wetland also captures carbon dioxide, offsetting emissions from thousands of cars, and provides a safe refuge for migratory birds and other endangered species. The Dos Rios Restoration Project has brought remarkable changes to this small part of San Joaquin Valley, stopping frequent floods and shifting long-standing views on environmental conservation. However, it's just a small victory in the grand scheme of things. Agricultural interests still dominate the vast majority of the Central Valley, controlling both the land and water. As climate change intensifies the cycle of droughts and floods in California, experts are calling for more projects like Dos Rios, and they say it's more urgent than ever. But replicating Dos Rios involves more than just finding the funds to buy and restore thousands of acres. It also means negotiating with a powerful agricultural industry that has often been at odds with environmental efforts. This industry feeds much of the nation with its fruits and nuts. To truly expand the Dos Rios model, it'll require convincing farmers to use less land, conserve more water, and perhaps even scale back on production. This is a tall order, but it's necessary for the health of California's environment and its people. You can see the last century of work in the Central Valley as a big effort to make things stable. Alfalfa fields, citrus orchards, and nut trees need a lot of water, and they can't just wait for rain. Back in the early 1800s, when settlers first came to Central Valley, they found a wild ecosystem. The valley was basically a giant drain for the Sierra Nevada mountains, sending trillions of gallons of water out to the ocean every spring. During the worst flood years, parts of the valley turned into what was called an inland sea. It took some time, but eventually the federal government and the powerful farmers who controlled the valley managed to tame these waters. They built dozens of dams in the Sierra Nevada to store melting snow and use it for irrigation. They also built hundreds of miles of levees to keep the rivers from flooding. However, by controlling the rivers this way, the government and the farmers ended up drying out a lot of the valley. They cut off the floodwaters that had been nourishing the land for centuries. Fixing California's troubled water system in the face of climate change is a long-term task. By 2040, in line with California's groundbreaking law on groundwater regulation, farmers may need to stop using up to 1 million acres of productive farmland, which would mean losing billions in revenue. At the same time, protecting the region's cities from flooding will require billions more to strengthen old dirt levees and water channels. In theory, restoring floodplains like Dos Rios could be a perfect solution to the state's water issues. However, the challenge is massive, needing potentially dozens of similar projects to truly make an impact. But solving this won't be simple. California's weather patterns are shifting too, longer dry spells and more intense rainy periods. From 2020 to 2022, we faced some of the driest years ever, and then 2023 flipped the script with record rainfall. The reservoirs, full in 2019, hit critical lows by 2022. It's not as obvious, but the groundwater storage took a big hit during those dry years as well. This recent drought was particularly tough because both California and the Colorado River Basin were dry at the same time. Usually, the Metropolitan Water District could compensate for Northern California's water shortages with supplies from the Colorado River or vice versa. This time, both sources were dry, leading to severe water restrictions across the state, including major cuts in agricultural water use, bans on watering public spaces, and in some areas, residential outdoor watering was limited to just 1 day a week. California still gets enough rain overall, but it comes all at once, and we struggle to capture, store, and transport it from wet years to dry ones. We need to get better at catching stormwater and spring snowmelt, storing it, and then moving it to where it's needed in dry periods. With a well-designed water system, we can ensure enough water for farms, cities, and natural habitats. If we have enough stored water, we can help fish spawn and keep habitats healthy, while also supporting irrigation and urban needs. This isn't a problem we can solve with just one kind of project. We'll need to use every tool we have. Yes, we must keep conserving water, but we also need to make sure we're reusing treated wastewater instead of just dumping it into rivers or the ocean. Although some wastewater discharge is necessary for natural habitats and aquatic life, a lot of it could be reused for things like irrigation, recharging groundwater, or even direct urban use. We also have brackish groundwater basins that can provide useful water once desalted. Places like the Arlington and Chino desalters are already doing this, supplying thousands of acre-feet of clean water each year. And let's not forget ocean desalination, a proven method that can help meet the water needs under the right conditions. With a wet winter in 2023, California's surface reservoirs are set to be full this year. However, the groundwater basins refill much more slowly. Even though we have the water available, capturing and storing it for future recharge is a challenge. For instance, in December 2022, 230,000 acre-feet of stormwater flowed into the ocean from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta that could have been used beneficially if we had the capacity to capture and store it. Similarly, Lake Mead and Lake Powell on the Colorado River are recovering slowly and expected to end the water year at less than 50% capacity. Addressing the water supply issues requires a combined effort at both the state and local levels. At the state level, we need more large surface reservoirs and the infrastructure to capture stormwater and snowmelt to transport it to these new storage areas. These are big, costly projects that local water agencies and even the Metropolitan Water District can't handle on their own. At the local and regional levels, efforts are ongoing to enhance our capacity to capture and store storm runoff. New recharge basins have been built recently, and a significant project is under construction below the Seven Oaks Dam on the Santa Ana River. We also need to adjust how flood control dams operate to allow for water storage without compromising flood control. This approach has been successfully implemented at the Prado Dam near Corona in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers. Here, water is released only as fast as Orange County water agencies can absorb it into their groundwater basins, unless there's a high flow or a major rainfall forecast. Similar adjustments are being sought for the operation of Seven Oaks Dam to support water storage and ensure the consistent release of water into the San Bernardino Valley basins, which are crucial for riversides, as the majority of Riverside Public Utilities water comes from these sources and the water level's been dropping for years. What if I told you Florida is tackling a geography problem on a scale never seen before? With billions of dollars on the line, the Sunshine State's reshaping itself to keep up with its explosive growth. Known for its tourist hotspots and a booming economy, Florida's about to go on a journey that could redefine its future. Stay tuned to find out how this ambitious plan will change the landscape of one of America's most favored destinations. Florida, home to Disney World, space shuttle launches, and the Everglades, is the fastest growing state in the U.S. It boasts the fourth largest economy and is the third most populated state, with 1,000 people moving there every day. People are drawn by its mild climate, favorable tax laws, and expanding business community. Tourism, Florida's biggest industry, attracts millions each year to its state and national parks. In 2022, a record 137.5 million visitors contributed over $1 billion to the state's economy. One of Florida's most notable attractions is the Everglades, a UNESCO World Heritage Site spanning 1.5 million acres. The Everglades, one of the largest wetlands in the world, is home to endangered, rare, and exotic wildlife. Contrary to popular belief, the Everglades are not a swamp, but a slow-moving river flowing over an area 40 miles wide and 100 miles long, from the south shore of Lake Okeechobee to the mangrove estuaries of Florida Bay. Florida's population has skyrocketed from 2.7 million in the 50s to 22.6 million in 2023. This growth transformed Florida from an agricultural state with sparsely populated rural areas into a densely populated state. Cities like Miami, Orlando, Tampa, and Jacksonville have expanded so much that they now form a single megacity region known as a megalopolis. However, this urban development has had highly problematic consequences. The state's 21 million residents and 80 million annual visitors generate over 32 million tons of solid waste. Increasing landfill space has become an issue, with costs rising from $400,000 per acre in 1959. Although Florida aimed to recycle 75% of its waste by 1969, achieving this goal has proven challenging. Pollution and waste management are ongoing concerns. In 2010, Florida had 44 federal Superfund sites, 101 brownfields, 13,527 petroleum cleanups, and more than 3,000 other hazardous waste sites. The shallow water table puts drinking water at risk. Phosphorus mining, essential to the local economy, poses environmental risks due to tailing pond breaches and contamination from phosphogypsum. In 2021, a dam breach at the Piney Point phosphate plant led to significant contamination in Tampa Bay. Florida's soil is naturally high in phosphorus, and combined with fertilizer use, this has led to excessive phosphorus in water runoff. Consequently, the state's implemented regulations to limit phosphorus-based fertilizers in certain areas. Climate change is another critical issue. Florida, often described as America's ground zero for climate change, faces increased flooding due to rising sea levels and the threat of more frequent and intense hurricanes. A majority of Floridians believe in anthropogenic climate change, with about two-thirds acknowledging it as of March last year. However, political division remains, with Democrats generally agreeing on the issue while only half of Republicans support teaching climate change in schools. Some communities have started implementing climate change mitigation strategies, though statewide efforts are hindered by political challenges. On top of that, Florida's dealing with unprecedented flooding, water contamination, rising sea level, coastal erosion, and a surge in devastating storms. These issues threaten not only its tourism and leisure industries, but also its very existence. Florida's unique wildlife thrives in an environment crucial for providing drinking water, preventing floods, and coping with sea level rises and saltwater intrusion. However, leaky septic tanks and fertilizer runoff from lawns and farms have contaminated the watershed, causing massive toxic algae blooms in the state's lakes, rivers, and coastlines. These blooms, some of the most potent natural poisons on Earth, can take many forms, from red tide to clumps of brown gunk to serious blooms that turn the water green or bluish-purple. The latter releases a toxin called microcystin, which scientists have linked to liver damage in humans. To address these severe issues, scientists, politicians, and water agencies are collaborating on extensive river, floodplain, and wetland restorations. This massive project, aiming to renaturalize Florida's waterways, is estimated to cost over $10.5 billion and spans more than 35 years, making it the largest hydraulic restoration effort ever undertaken in the United States. Over the past century, human activities have disrupted the natural flow of water in Florida by dredging and draining its rivers, marshes, and floodplains to make room for development in agricultural farmland. Natural winding rivers were straightened and transformed into concrete channels running in straight lines. This process polluted the waterways, killed off the wildlife, depleted drinking water supplies, and increased the risk of flooding. Flooding in Florida isn't just caused by heavy rainstorms. It happens because natural landscapes have been severely altered. Winding rivers that spread out over vast plains used to absorb rainwater and soak it in the ground, recharging underground water reserves called aquifers, the main source of drinking water. By turning rivers into straight concrete canals, heavy rain events now lead to water overflow into urban areas, massively reducing the drinking water supply. A clear example of this is the Kissimmee River, the most important river in the Everglades watershed. The Kissimmee River, historically filled with twists and bends, would overflow into a vast area during the wet season, allowing slow-moving waters to filter nutrients and recharge the underground aquifers. This natural process supported Florida's primary drinking water supply. However, between 1962 and 1970, the Kissimmee River was dredged and turned into a concrete canal, shortening the 103-mile distance from Lake Kissimmee to Lake Okeechobee to just 56 miles. This straightening dried out 40,000 acres of floodplain below Lake Kissimmee. As a result, ranches began grazing cattle on the now dry floodplains, and wildlife habitats and fish populations were reduced by 90%. Throughout the mid-1900s, the practice of straightening and channelizing rivers and waterways spread across Florida, resulting in the entire Everglades watershed being ditched, dredged, and drained. Florida's water, once flowing freely through a network of natural winding rivers, was now confined to concrete canals and flood control structures. This transformation had dire consequences. The state started to run out of drinking water, flooding worsened, and the watershed became increasingly contaminated. In response, engineers decided to restore the natural winding routes of the rivers. Engineers determined that the best method to restore the rivers was to use a material called spoil, which had been piled along the edge of the canal during the channelization process. This spoil was simply pushed back into the canal in a process known as backfilling. The restoration project began in 1999. Over the next 20 years, at a cost of $875 million, 22 miles of concrete canal were backfilled, returning flow to 45 miles of the river's historic channel and restoring approximately 40 square miles of the river's floodplain ecosystem. Reestablishing the floodplain has had a profoundly positive impact throughout the watershed, extending all the way down to Florida Bay. Wildlife's begun to bounce back. Wading birds and waterfowl have returned, sandbars have reemerged, and native plants have started to reestablish themselves. Fish populations have also increased, leading to a rise in bird and alligator populations, benefiting the entire food chain. An essential part of this renaturalization process has been the removal of a road that was built across the Everglades, which blocked the natural flow of water from north to south. This road had significantly impeded the flow of water into the Everglades, disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Built in 1928, the Tamiami Trail Road was built across the Everglades, forming a barrier that disrupted the natural flow of water from the central Everglades to the southern Everglades. This disruption reduced water flows, increased wildfires, and allowed non-native plant species to thrive, while decreasing the habitat for wading bird colonies and alligators. To restore the natural water flow, the decision was made to remove the old trail road and reconnect the entire Everglades watershed. In March 2020, a project began to remove the old road. The worn-out asphalt was chewed up and hauled away, bridges were taken out, and the tangled vegetation that had built up on either side of the road was cleared. Now water flows freely once again, restoring floodplains for flood prevention and wildlife habitat. As part of this restoration effort, the Faka Union Pump Station was created. This new pump station moves water into previously drained areas to restore a 55,000-acre natural habitat, benefiting both people and wildlife. The pump station helps reduce excess water levels from the Golden Gate Estate's urbanization area, providing flood protection for residents by moving large amounts of water into a huge spreader basin, which also restores the floodplain habitat, benefiting wildlife. Extensive large-scale invasive species removal projects have also been undertaken. Areas overrun by invasive plant species have been cleared through controlled burns and excavation. Florida's subtropical climate and ornamental plant industries make the region particularly vulnerable to the establishment of invasive species, which adversely affect and compete with the natural ecology. Removing these invasive species is crucial to restoring the native ecosystem and ensuring the long-term sustainability of the region. The restoration of the Everglades is a massive endeavor that requires cooperation between engineers, scientists, and conservationists. The goal is to return the Everglades to a more natural state, where water flows freely, wildlife thrives, and the ecosystem functions as it did before human intervention. The benefits of this project are already becoming evident. Wildlife's returning, water quality is improving, and the risk of flooding is decreasing. These efforts are not only crucial for the environment, but also for the millions of people who depend on the Everglades for clean drinking water and protection from floods. Removing barriers like the Tamiami Trail Road and implementing restoration projects such as the Faka Union Pump Station are vital steps. These projects help reestablish natural water flows and floodplains while removing invasive species. As a result, the Everglades is gradually returning to its natural state, supporting a diverse array of wildlife and providing essential resources for the community. This ongoing restoration work ensures the health and sustainability of this unique ecosystem, safeguarding it for future generations. With the catastrophic failure of Dubai's man-made islands, many suggest the Dubai miracle is finally over. Starting as a small settlement of 800 people, it is impressive to see how far they came along. But where did it all start? In 1966, the Emiratis hit the jackpot by discovering oil reserves. With that came huge sums of cash for developing critical infrastructure like roads, hospitals, and housing. This turned into the Dubai we now know, a center of business, glitz, and glam. To understand how Dubai got here, it's important to know how it emerged as one of the top destinations in the world, with 14 million tourists just in 2022. At the turn of the 21st century, the city has seen rapid development, with one mega project after the other. It's wrong to attribute Dubai's development solely to oil, which, to be fair, was the economic kickstart it needed. However, the real money started rolling in after Dubai started diversifying its income streams to compete with the neighboring Abu Dhabi. Oil money was invested in strengthening trade and industry. To attract international investors, Dubai created its first free economic zone in 1895, and then went on to add 20-plus zones to its belt. A free zone is an area where companies are taxed very lightly along with custom duty exemptions among other benefits. The trick seemed to work as several foreign companies flocked to Dubai, placing it as a global leader in the commercial arena. But Dubai wasn't just lucky with the oil, it's also blessed with a strategic geographical position. Being in the center of the world with a coastline, it was the ideal candidate for developing international airports as well as marine trade routes. With a rapidly booming economy, the hospitality sector wasn't far behind. Giants like Burj Khalifa, Burj Al Arab, Dubai Frame, Emirates Tower, and the Canyon Tower have flooded its skyline. These iconic buildings prompted a huge influx of tourists and investors alike who were forced to ignore the scorching heat. The Palms, or the man-made islands, were the most ambitious of their engineering wonders. Given that Dubai didn't have much of a coast, it was suggested to create artificial coastlines. This allowed them the space to create floating properties. After 20 years of hard work and $15 billion already spent, the islands look like a scattered mess of sand. With most of the area abandoned, projects on halt, and sand sinking back into the sea, it's safe to say that this was a bad investment. But this isn't the only trouble that Dubai has on its plate. Many more serious problems continue to haunt the future prospects of this city. Why is this mega city failing all of a sudden? And most importantly, what's Dubai's radical plan to be the world's best city by 2040? To understand the issues in Dubai today, let's break it down one by one. Since Dubai was developed so rapidly over the past 3 decades, many key architectural elements were left out, the transport network being the #1 problem. If you look at the map of Dubai, you'll find a confusing web of highways all over the place. Due to the lack of seawalls and other alternative routes, all residents are forced to use the highways even for small distances. These highways are dangerous because of the high traffic volume and loose speed laws in Dubai. In fact, in 2022, 3,300 accidents occurred, significantly higher than last year's figures. If you compare this data to the UK, there's a huge difference. UAE stands at 18 accidental deaths per 100,000 people, while the UK is at 3 deaths per 100,000. A quick look at the Sheikh Zayed Highway, also known as E11, will reflect the same issue. It's the main artery of the city, which supports more than 10,000 vehicles per hour. It's basically just one long stretch through the entire city of Dubai with a few side streets. Moreover, Dubai's popular destinations aren't even connected by direct roadways. The 3.5 million residents of this city require a safe and efficient transport system. More importantly, they need more covered sidewalks and bicycle pathways to beat the dependency on cars. The massive structures cluttering the whole landscape leave little space for parks and green spaces. Not to mention that the construction of the 300 artificial islands made with several tons of rocks has affected the marine ecosystem and the coral life. Will Dubai overcome these challenges? It's wrong to rule out completely. After all, this city is no stranger to building the impossible. The good news is that Dubai's recognized these problems and is working to make amends. That's why they've released a detailed 2040 urban master plan. It plans to make Dubai the most livable city by 2040. How exactly is it going to do that? Let's break it down one by one. Mohammed bin Rashid, the current ruler of the city, has given the green light for the Dubai 2040 plan that encompasses laws for urban development, housing, education, health, as well as preserving nature and heritage. Keeping in mind that Dubai's population will go from 3.5 million to 7.8 million in the next 20 years, a comprehensive outline should be laid out. As the number of people will increase, so will the facilities. This includes an extensive revamp of the public transportation system by integrating buses, pedestrians, and bicycle options for residents. It aims to place at least 55% of the population within 0.5 miles of the mass transit stations, allowing them to reach 80% of their daily needs and destinations. Cycling lanes would be laid down across the emirate as part of a move to encourage healthier lifestyles and cut traffic. Bicycles and pedestrians can make use of green corridors that'll be established to link the service, residential areas, and workplaces. This will turn Dubai into a 20-minute city by removing the dependency on long highways. Moreover, 5 main urban centers will be developed, out of which 2 will be completely new. The plan is to create each of these into a fully functional unit that can provide a whole range of lifestyles for a diverse audience. The creation of these urban centers will boost economic growth by providing plenty of job opportunities to its residents. The existing urban centers include Deira and Bur Dubai, the historic and cultural landmark of Dubai, downtown, and Business Bay, which, as you can guess, would be the business capital. And finally, Dubai Marina and JBR, which would focus on hospitality and leisure. The new centers are the Expo 2020, which will include affordable housing and become a focal point for exhibitions, tourism, and logistics sectors. The last sector, named Silicon Oasis, would be a hub for science and technology, attracting talent from all over the world to drive innovation and a digital economy. A staggering $680 million would be set aside for creating 86 square feet of green spaces. As a result, wildlife sanctuaries and natural rural areas will encompass 60% of Dubai. Seems like the Emiratis are bringing the much-needed balance between nature and construction technology. But that's not all. The sea, which is the all-too-loyal partner of this city, would be reformed too. There'd be a 400% increase in size of the public beaches, covering an area of 10 million square feet. This would cost Dubai almost 400 million AED, which converted into US dollars is 136 million. The extensive coastline would provide space for 35,000 families for beachside living. Keeping in mind that the population of Dubai will be doubled by 2040, a plan for sustainable housing is more necessary than ever. Under this plan, old districts would be revitalized, amounting to 1.7 billion square feet of land for housing. The stated objective of this scheme is providing integrated and diverse housing options with the highest planning standards, including green areas, commercial centers, and recreational spaces. This will cater to the citizens' housing needs for the next 20 years to come. The design allows integrated townhouse complexes in which multi-story buildings can be built. In the first phase, more than 4,000 plots and houses will be provided. As there are many people who, due to financial constraints, can't avail this opportunity, the United Arab Emirates has got them covered too. For this purpose, interest-free loans of up to 1 million AED will be available for eligible candidates. To take it a step further, a digital platform for those enrolled in the National Housing Program would be launched for citizens to exchange grants, land plots, and housing units among themselves. Next up is the stunning village of Hatta. Being a centuries-old site, it features impressive hills, stone houses, and a traditional water system. It's another national treasure for Dubai, being marketed as a tourist site. A sustainable hydroelectric power plant will be built to support the energy needs, all while preserving its natural beauty. Hatta would be developed in partnership with the private sector. Transportation and hotels will be constructed to facilitate tourists and locals. All this will help strengthen the tourism and agricultural sector, contributing 32% to the GDP. All these plans may look nice on paper, but the reality is much more complex than that. It's time to look at the actionable steps Dubai's taking to make these dreams a reality. Starting with the Dubai Reef Project. This would be an artificial reef covering an area of 77 square miles. Extensive use of the sea for leisure and export purposes has had an adverse reaction on marine and coral life. Dubai's coast has been greatly impacted by oil digging, dredging, and reclamation projects in the past decades. The Reef Project will regenerate the coastal ecosystem of Dubai. It aims to protect from storms while also providing a habitat for wildlife and fish. This construction innovation will provide a home to more than 1 billion corals and 100 million mangrove trees. At the heart of the project, there will be a research center working on the conservation of sea life. This floating community will include residential, hospitality, retail, educational, and research facilities. All of this will be powered by solar and hydropower, producing clean energy. Food would be produced by seaweed and oyster farms. Dubbed as the largest ocean restoration project, the project will feature floating eco-lodges and resorts to attract travelers and researchers alike. Next up is the Dubai Loop. It's a 58-mile-long corridor built for walking and bicycling. The loop solves 2 of the biggest problems for Dubai, one of them being the unbearable heat. That's why this corridor would be completely covered to shield travelers from the sun, while also being climate controlled all year round. It's a project under URB, the same company behind the Dubai Reef Project. Working in close coordination with a 2040s vision for Dubai, the loop aims to make cycling and walking the primary means of transport, instead of car travel for 80% of the population. But the most mind-blowing part of its engineering is converting energy from footsteps to power the entire setup. The running tracks are integrated with kinetic paving, which draws usable energy from every footstep. More than just providing a pathway for safe travel, the loop will also feature leisure and wellness facilities such as fitness stations and sports courts. Tourism assets such as wellness hotels and wellness centers will also be integrated into the loop to promote tourism. Hopefully, this project will transform Dubai into the sustainable, more inclusive and interconnected city that it always plans to be. While these projects may have caused a stir in the business community, everyday citizens are skeptical about these tall claims. It's more than just about exceptional engineering and the billions of dollars required for this work. Will the unforgiving terrain of Dubai allow human ambitions to turn into a reality? That's something for you to answer in the comments section. Dams are some of the most impressive feats of engineering in the world. In the US alone, there are over 90,000 dams generating electricity, controlling floods, and supplying water to nearby communities. Take the 4 dams along the Klamath River, which stretches across the Oregon-California border. However, there's a significant problem. These dams are not great for the river's fish and water quality. After more than a decade of debates about costs, ecology, and the impact on salmon, officials have decided on a drastic solution: demolishing all 4 dams. This decision marks a pivotal moment in addressing the environmental issues caused by these structures. The goal is to restore the river's natural flow, improve water quality, and support the return of salmon and other aquatic life to the Klamath River. This move reflects a growing recognition of the need to balance human engineering achievements with environmental sustainability. By removing these dams, officials hope to create a healthier ecosystem and a more sustainable future for the communities that depend on the river. The upcoming removal of the 4 dams on the Klamath River will be the largest river restoration project ever undertaken. While constructing a dam is a complex feat, dismantling one is an even more challenging endeavor. The Klamath River, known for its stunning scenery and diverse wildlife, flows over 400 kilometers through parts of Oregon and California, draining a basin that covers 31,000 square kilometers. This river was once home to the 3rd largest salmon population on the West Coast, providing a vital resource to local indigenous groups. However, the construction of hydroelectric dams in the early 1900s dramatically changed this dynamic. From 1895 to 1915, advancements in hydroelectric technology spurred the construction of many new dams and power plants, including those on the Klamath River. These dams were initially celebrated for their ability to harness the river's power, producing enough energy to supply 70,000 homes at peak capacity. However, they often operate below capacity due to low water levels and other issues. As with any major infrastructure project, there are trade-offs. While these dams have provided benefits such as flood prevention, tax revenue, and recreational opportunities, they've also had some significant negative impacts. The structures block fish from accessing upstream spawning habitats, causing the salmon population to plummet to less than 10% of its original numbers. This decline has raised concerns among experts that the Klamath salmon are on the brink of extinction, affecting not only the local tribal groups, but also the broader ecosystem that relies on salmon. The environmental impact of the dams extends beyond fish populations. During warmer months, the river's shallow reservoirs frequently experience toxic blue-green algae blooms. These blooms occur when nutrient-rich water is trapped, creating an ideal environment for algae growth. The result is harmful for both wildlife and humans, posing a significant environmental and public health challenge. For years, environmentalists and local tribal groups have advocated for a solution. While some homeowners worry about the financial implications of dam removal, including potential tax increases and decreased property values, the overall consensus has shifted towards removal as the most viable option. Even PacifiCorp, the energy supplier, has concluded that removing the dams is more cost-effective than constructing fish ladders and other modifications needed to meet modern environmental standards. Additionally, the company has assured that the electricity generated by the dams can be easily replaced through alternative means. In 2022, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission authorized the $450 million removal of the four major dams: Copco Dams 1 and 2, J.C. Boyle Dam, and Iron Gate Dam. This authorization marks a historic moment, as no dam removal project at this scale has ever been attempted. This endeavor will certainly require meticulous planning and execution to ensure it's done correctly and safely. There are two primary methods for removing a dam: instantaneous and staged removal. Instantaneous removal occurs quickly, often within hours or days. This method involves a reservoir drawdown, where water and built-up sediment stored behind the dams are released downstream. This rapid approach can be efficient, but most carefully managed to prevent downstream flooding and other environmental impacts. Staged removal, on the other hand, takes place over a longer period, allowing for a more controlled and gradual process. This method involves incrementally lowering the water level and removing portions of the dam structure in stages. By doing so, the potential for sudden downstream impacts is minimized, allowing ecosystems and communities time to adapt. The choice between instantaneous and staged removal depends on various factors, including the size and condition of the dam, environmental considerations, and community input. For the Klamath River dams, the planning process will likely incorporate a combination of both methods to balance efficiency with safety and environmental protection. The removal of the Klamath River dams is not just about dismantling physical structures. It's about restoring a vital ecosystem, reviving a once thriving salmon population, and honoring the cultural and economic importance of the river to local communities. The project will involve extensive environmental monitoring and restoration efforts, ensuring that the river can recover and thrive in the years to come. The engineering challenges are quite immense. Crews will need to carefully manage the release of water and sediment, reconstruct riverbanks, and reestablish natural habitats. They'll also need to address infrastructure concerns, such as modifying bridges and roads affected by the changes in the river's flow. Moreover, the project will require significant collaboration among federal, state, and local agencies, tribal groups, environmental organizations, and the private sector. Effective communication and cooperation will be crucial to navigating the complex logistics and ensuring the project's success. Most dams have an emergency drainage system to quickly lower the water level if needed. This usually involves either a low-level conduit, a channel that can be opened to allow water to flow through, or a stop log, a stack of logs or beams that can be raised to let water pass. Once the water is released downstream, the dam itself is demolished with explosives and the rubble is removed from the site. Staged removal, which typically takes months or years, is reserved for taller dams with large amounts of built-up sediment that would pose environmental risks if released too quickly. In this method, rivers are pumped or diverted away from the construction site through tunnels or channels, allowing more control during the reservoir drawdown and sediment release. When the rivers are diverted and the basins dry, the dam is demolished using tools like excavators or explosives. This method is the basis for the Klamath Dam removals, with variations depending on the size and materials of each dam, ultimately returning the river to a free-flowing condition. Starting in 2023, Copco No. 2, the smallest of the four dams, will be the first to undergo demolition using the drill and shoot method, followed later by the other three. Unlike the others, Copco No. 2 has no real reservoir, so a drawdown won't be needed. However, this will be a necessary step for the remaining dams. In early 2024, crews will open low-level outlets for the rest of the dams to slowly initiate the drawdown of water and sediment at a rate of 1.5 meters a day. Scheduling this during the winter is advantageous because it's the most biologically dormant time of year, so any sediment released into the water is expected to have minimal impact. The amount of sediment expected from the modeling will be equivalent to what the Klamath River transports annually. The drawdowns of the three remaining dams will occur simultaneously to leverage the water power, helping to mobilize and push the sediment through the river. The removal of the Klamath River dams represent an unprecedented effort in river restoration, both in scale and ambition. The process involves diverting the river through new or existing diversion tunnels from the original dam construction. This diversion allows the river channel to dry out, providing a safe environment for the demolition of the dams. However, removing the dams is only part of the equation. Once the water is drawn down, a 2,200-acre footprint behind the dams will remain. This area will need extensive restoration, including the establishment of native vegetation and the enhancement of habitats to support the return of salmon. This restoration effort is crucial for reestablishing the natural ecosystem and ensuring the long-term health of the river. The scale of this dam removal is unprecedented and has not been without controversy. The complexities involved in the demolition and subsequent restoration require a massive and coordinated effort from various managing entities. This project, the largest of its kind in U.S. history, demands meticulous planning, innovative engineering solutions, and significant financial investment. Despite its size, the Klamath River project is part of a larger trend of dam removals occurring across the United States. In 2022 alone, 20 states dismantled 65 dams to reconnect streams and rivers. This trend highlights a growing recognition of the importance of restoring natural waterways and the benefits of removing outdated or harmful infrastructure. It's important to note that not every dam needs to be torn down. Many dams still serve their intended purposes, such as generating hydroelectric power, controlling floods, and supplying water. However, as decades pass and environmental standards evolve, the benefits and impacts of these structures are continually reassessed. In some cases, the ecological and social costs outweigh the benefits, leading to decisions to remove the dams. While it'll take years to fully understand the effects of this dam removal, the project is a significant milestone in the field of river restoration. It sets a precedent for how we approach the removal of aging infrastructure and the restoration of natural ecosystems. The lessons learned from the Klamath River project will inform future efforts to balance human development with ecological sustainability. We are committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more visionary builds.